Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the conclusion of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 10, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, it is round 8 of 8, and what we've all been waiting for. 7 weeks of racing have led us all the way up to this point, and in what has been a sensational season of racing, we still have 2 championships to crown. It's the AM class and the team's championship still to crown, but even so, there's plenty up for score in the runner-up spots in the elite and pro classes, and we are here today in the United States of America for the one and only Daytona International Speedway. Located in the state of Florida, this is a circuit that puts man and machine through the test year in, year out, playing host annually to a wide variety of endurance races on its road course, which blends together the majority of the oval with a rather aggressive infield section, and perhaps most notably, the 24 Hours of Daytona, sponsored by Rolex, is the one event that draws many a team and crowd to the venerable circuit year in, year out, as it draws our virtual spectators and you guys and girls in the YouTube chat, but also on top of that, our drives to its virtual tarmac today. Well, who is going to come away with the ultimate glory in the championship? For of course, there's one thing that Daytona always brings to it with its magical nature, and that is no championship is complete without a win at Daytona. Well, as we get ready to go racing, welcome to you all tuning in via the official UKSimRacing live broadcast, available only on the UKSimRacing YouTube channel. And if you go to youtube.com and search for UKSimRacing or UKSR, you can tune in there. And if you're not subscribed to the channel already, we do strongly recommend you do so to make sure you stay up to date with all the latest broadcasts. In the quarantine booth, you have myself, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britney Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action today, and indeed over the entirety of the season, and what a season it has been. But let's talk a little bit more about the calendar and what's played out in the past and what is here in the present. We started off all the way back on the 2nd of April. It's crazy to think 2 months have passed so rapidly, but indeed they have, and we started off with round 1 of 8 at the Red Bull Ring in Austria. And there in our opening sprint race of the season, it set the tone very high with a three-way battle on the final lap for the elite class win, and in particular Jacko Taylor pulling off an absolutely brilliant double overtake into turn number 3, the Tiki SimSport driver creating a legendary status for himself in one race. Then in round number 2, we made our way to Spain for the Jerez circuit, recently introduced to iRacing at that point in time, and there it was the rise of Philip Schwerke, who managed to pull off an absolutely brilliant drive from front to field all the way to the checkered flag in the Porsche 911. But further down the field we saw the battle in the AM class between Mark Johnson and Steinar Sani really be elevated, albeit it was Johnson who came out to the top after Sani's mistake early on in the race. But the 9th of April saw the racing intensity continue to be amplified, and in round number 3 at Belle Isle in the state of Detroit, in the city of Detroit I should say, in the state of Michigan in the US of A, we got to see our drivers take to the very tight and narrow circuit of Belle Isle Grand Prix Isle Park circuit. And indeed on the 16th of April it was all about steering clear of the walls and overtakes being limited to strategy, but some of our drivers managed to find their way out front of the field, and indeed some absolutely delivering when it mattered most in qualifying. In round number 4 we conclude the first half of the season in Germany at the Nürburgring Gesamtstrecke, also known as the combined layout of the Nürburgring and the 24-hour endurance layout. On the 23rd of April saw many of driver take to its numerous corners, 100 plus in total, total, and well, there's only one big name who came out on top in the end overall and in the elite class, and that was Sam Congreve, in an absolutely late twist of turn of fashion, in the fact that Håkon Grebstad, who had been leading by such a margin all the way through the race, picked up a pit stop penalty, and therefore Congreve was allowed to run away to victory for Empire Motorsport. Then we took our first mid-season break before returning on the 7th of May and kicking off the second half of the season, albeit a little bit of a hiatus after which in round number 5 at Road America, and there we saw it was an absolutely brilliant race in the Wisconsin County circuit, or the Wisconsin State circuit we should say, albeit in Sheboygan County, and with our drivers taking 2 at the American asphalt, it was absolutely fantastic racing from start to finish with a power circuit absolutely delivering. But there in the AM class we saw drama towards the end of the race, with Jack Wynn and Mark Johnson coming together and costing Johnson some major points in the championship, and as we went into our second break week, that really set up the run in the AM class, indeed in the other classes as well, for the final 3 rounds to come. In round number 6 when we returned, it was the 21st of May in Japan, and we went to the Okayama International Circuit, and what used to be known the TI Ida circuit, we saw the late twists and turns and the narrow road surface keep many of our drivers at bay, but also some absolutely brilliant racing action between many a driver, and it was the Tiki Simsport pair at the front of the field of what was Martin Tennant, and I do believe his teammate, unless I'm very much mistaken, of Ryan Davies, battling for the runner-up spot in the podium overall and in the elite class, and the two of them exchanging blows lap after lap. Then in round number 7, our penultimate round of the season, it was the Watkins Glen International Circuit in the US of A, and starting off what would be a double header in the USA and in the state of New York. Last time out on the 28th of May, we got to see fast and furious racing from start to finish, but Håkon Grebstad making it a triplet of wins, and also Pete Cox bringing home a key win in the pro class, which effectively means he is champion by default, albeit we'll explain a little bit more about that very shortly. But today is the 4th of June, and therefore it's our final feature race of the season, and we are here at Daytona. But coming onto our circuit for today then, let's talk a little bit more about it. The Daytona International Speedway's road course plays host, and located near the city of Daytona Beach in Volusia County of the state of Florida in the US of A. This circuit, as you can see from our circuit map provided by iRacing.com, thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and the circuit maps that come with it, is a 12-corner circuit that needs no introduction for the calibre of the race that it can create. Slipstream orientated racing is the name of the game around here, albeit the technical infield section interrupting the slipstream battling, as we see our drivers make the way across the start-finish line in towards turn number 1, coming off of the banking and into the opening left-hander. It's a very late apex and a heavy trail braking zone which can catch out the wisest of drivers, and we shouldn't be shy of expecting 2-3 wide into that left-hander lap after lap. Then they'll make the way through the S-curves to turns 2 and 3, flat out all the way through, while breaking the way into the horseshoe hairpin at turn number 4, and then it's all about getting back on the power as soon as possible for the charge up towards the next hairpin at turn number 6. But along the way, we have the left-hand kick at turn number 5. We're on cold tyres and heavy fuel. It could see some other drivers have to lift off. Alternatively, there may be a bit of understeer to the grass, but make it safely up towards the next hairpin at turn number 6. They'll see the road surface narrows quite significantly, but drivers will still go for moves there under braking. Exiting the corner, they'll head up towards turn number 7, a sharp left-hand right-angle corner, which spits our drivers back out into the oval, and as they build up their speed, they'll make their way onto the bank in a turn number 8 before flying through onto the back straight. And on the back straight, we have the bus stop chicane. Turns 9, 10 and 11, a left-right-left sequence. As our drivers come on through at the chicane, they'll find themselves needing to balance the art of keeping the car pointed on the straight and narrow and carrying all the speed they can as they charge out of 11 and onto the bank into turn number 12 to head around and complete the lap. But given the fact we have over 75% of the oval as part of the road surface layout, it does mean that slipstream is going to be highly prevalent, and overtakes will need to be made in the infield section, and our drivers will need to try and break away and get a second at least on their rivals, or as they may find themselves closed up once again by the time they get to the end of the lap and go into turn number 1. So expect plenty of battling here, but also a lot of strategy. But before we go racing, let's give you a reminder of the rules. And as we can see, setup wise, drivers are not permitted to change their car without penalty. That rule has been effective since round number 3. And car fuel load shall be restricted to 45% for all races. Now it's definitely going to throw a few pit stops in today, but we'll come on to that very shortly. Qualifying wise, a closed qualified format shall be used, where all the drivers will have 4 laps or 10 minutes, whichever expires first, to set their best possible time, and with an average lap time of 1 3/4 minutes, or 1 minute and 44 seconds approximately, we are expecting our drivers to exhaust their 4 flying laps available to them before we do get to that 10-minute mark. Then coming on to our race rules, meanwhile, we can see here, race-wise in general, racing shall commence via a double-fold rolling start. This is the tradition of the UKSimRacing GT3 League. There be no mandatory pit stop requirements. So what that means is our drivers can choose when they want to pit, and whether they decide to go for a 1-stop, a 2-stop, a 3-stop, a 4, or however many more, it's up to our drivers to know when to pit and what they do in the pit lane in terms of taking on fuel and potentially changing tyres. Each driver has 1 fast repair available as well should they receive a knock to the car, and there shall be no potential deployment of a safety car for for both this round and the remaining rounds of the championship, and after back to the fact we did have a safety car in the first half of the season. But all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. If there are any incidents, there's no live stewarding that affect, and those incidents shall be resolved post-round. Now, given the fact today is a feature race, we'll see that our drivers will receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 25 or more instant points. And if they go up to 32, they'll be disqualified from the race. But that's enough rules, regulations, everything between. You're all here for the racing. And as we head back to our live pictures, well, let's take you through our schedule for today. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1 at UTC +1. And in just over 10 minutes' time, we're heading into our final qualifying session of the season. 10 minutes in nature, kicking off at 8 o'clock this evening. And who will come out on top for our final race on the grid. But of course, track position may not be too critical here, given the fact there's so much slipstream to be involved. But if you can be up towards the front of the field, then you can potentially give yourself some separation from the potential packs behind that may fall away as time presses on in the race. But after qualifying, we'll see our drivers make their way into the feature race, and that will be seeing the grid form at approximately 8:10 this evening. And then we'll have 90 minutes of racing action before we bring the curtain down, and what a season it has been. But in terms of ambient conditions at the moment, we have a 19 degree centigrade ambient temperature and a 42 degrees centigrade track temperature, so it's a scorcher of a circuit, as is quite normal here at Daytona. And with hot conditions, our drivers need to be wary of that tyre wear. But as we do look down to the circuit side, we have quite a few drivers who are making their way back onto the circuit today, and we get a brief witness there to Matt Edmondson, who jumps to the pits and makes his way back out the circuit. He's not been out of circuit for the last couple rounds due to personal circumstances, but we're very pleased to see the privateer in the 176 Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo making his way back in for the final round of the season. And we do have a grand total currently of 27 drivers in attendance, and plenty more potentially expected to come, albeit we have also got some big names who may not be here today. As we look to Ryan Davis and UKSimRacing GT3 making his way there through turn number 8, the Porsche 911 RSR driver powering his way on around right now and charging all the way up towards the bus stop chicane. But as we look from here back to the YouTube chat, we can say hello there to Martin Tilling, and good evening to you, Martin. And we'll competed in the elite class, and so there's no elites tonight. We do seem to be quite light on the elite class. I think a lot of elite drivers are not available for this round, but still with that, we do have the championship in the elite class already concluded, and we should give you a quick recap of each of the championships. And in the elite class, Håkon Grebstad, having made it a hat-trick of wins last time out of Watkins Glen International, has therefore essentially sealed the deal on the championship with a round to spare, and therefore the battle is now for P2. Sam Congreve, with his retirement earlier on in the season, will not be able to compete for P2. He's currently P3, but Nathan Foster, his teammate from Empire Motorsport, albeit from the sister division of Empire Motorsport B, whereas Congreve from Empire Motorsport A. Well, Foster is currently in P2, but not in attendance either. So what that does mean, there's an opportunity for Martin Tilling in particular to be able to usurp the pair and make his way into the runner-up spot, albeit he'll need to overhaul what is an 8-point deficit to do so. And Ryan Davies a further 6 points behind for UKSimRacing GT3 compared to his UKSimRacing Copper sister teammate. Well, for Davies, he'll need to overhaul what is effectively a grand total of 14 points if he wants to be able to do so. And here is Ryan Davies once again on screen, looking to try and achieve that. And it'll be interesting to see whether it's Tilling or Davies who comes out on top, if they're able to find the points, or whether it will be Nathan Foster who takes that runner-up spot. Now that is the situation in the elite class. Meanwhile, in the pro class, we've got a bit of an interesting scenario in the fact that arguably it's already sealed and done the championship. You won't be seeing Peter Cox on circuit today, but I do believe he's tuning in live from his holiday in Italy. A good evening to you, Peter, if you are tuning in right now. But we look at Brandon Hay, the privateer from Newbridge Esports, in the BMW M4 as he makes his way on around. But Peter Cox has effectively sealed the championship as of his performance at Watkins Glen, in the fact that he's on 192 points, and when drop scores are updated after today, his points tally will be improved, given the fact that he does have 26 points that will be added to his tally, and those 26 points from his racing round number 3 at Detroit. Meanwhile, for Darren Sharples, his one and only rival who could potentially take the championship away from him, for Darren Sharples needs to score a perfect score today. That means he needs to pick up pole position in qualifying in the pro class, plus also the fastest lap in the race. Oh, and also on top of that, take the race win, and that will give him 42 points. If he does so, then Sharples will essentially level the playing field and mean that it's a draw at the end of the championship, as we do see Sharples there parked up in the distance in the Audi R8 LMS, and the 777 driver here, the privateer, gets ready to go from the United Kingdom, and we look forward to seeing how he gets on. However, when it is tied up on the championship, we have had it confirmed by the official stewarding team that it will go to essentially a result countback, whereby it will start with the number of race wins picked up by both drivers. A good that Peter Cox currently has 3 wins in his pocket to what is Sharple's only 1 win. Therefore, if Sharple's wins stay, he makes it up to 2, and well, the maths is done, and it does mean that Peter Cox will have 3 wins to Sharple's is 2, and therefore it'll go the way of Peter Cox. So for Sharple's today, it's all about essentially picking up the runner-up spot, albeit he'll want to be able to have the right to say that he has been able to take Peter Cox the distance, and to do so he needs to achieve the perfect score to end the season on level points, but he will finish second by default as he makes his way out of the pit lane. As he heads on out there, what else is there to focus on in the Pro Class? Well, we also do have a grand old battle for P3 in the Pro Class Championship between Brandon Hay, Thomas Aspal and also Matt Strand. Albeit unfortunately the Racing Lab and driver Thomas Aspal will not be joining today, so therefore really it's a battle for P3 between Brandon Hay and what is Matt Strand, with the two of them separated by only 6 points. And we saw Brandon Hay only moments ago, but here's the Audi R8 Racing Lab and driver from Norway of Matt Strand as he makes his way through the bus stop chicane in the number 69 car, and as he powers his way on through there, well, he knows he's up against it. Give Brandon Hay's run of form to make it 2 podiums back to back, but Strand no slouch when it comes to the racing, and in particular picking up what was that great winner Okayama to his advantage. Well, can Strand go one step further today, as we do see the 2 third place battlers on screen together right now, and I do think that each of them will be looking at one another and thinking, I've got the upper hand on you, and we'll have to wait to see who is going to come out on top of the pair of them. But that's the situation in the Pro Class. And now lastly, coming on to the Am Class, this is the championship that's still yet to be decided. In one corner, you have Daniel Payes. He's currently parked up in the pit lane there in the old Tooting Cars Mercedes AMG Evo 2020 machine. The number 8 driver here, if you remember, going back to his interview, his post-round interview at the Nürburgring in round number 4, said that he didn't consider himself to be in contention for the championship. Well, how the weeks have gone a different way. In fact, he is currently the championship leader by 5 points over Mark Johnson for UKSimRacing Boss. And as we do look for Mark Johnson out on the circuit at the moment, albeit we can't quite see him. In fact, I do believe he's off circuit, just taking a bit of refreshment in the pit lane. Well, Mark Johnson needs to find 5 points in order to overhaul Daniel Payes. That's how close it is between the 2 of them, and it's Payes' consistency versus the ferocious pace of Mark Johnson, and who out of the 2 will come out top come the end of tonight. Keeping in mind that you do have drop scores in effect, and well, to put it in perspective, Daniel Payes could improve by a greater number of points compared to Mark Johnson, so arguably on paper Payes does have a clear advantage, plus his 5 points in hand. And well, for Payes, if he's able to pull it off, I'd love to have a post-round interview with him today and ask him the question. So, going back to that interview at Germany, how do you feel about it now, albeit with a little bit of sarcasm thrown in there, ladies and gentlemen, but you do get my point of the fact. I think he'll be absolutely speechless if he is able to take the championship, but at the same time for Mark Johnson, he'll be absolutely pleased if he's able to take it as well, because both drivers have definitely earned their right to become the AM champion this season. But then lastly, what about the team's championship, I hear you ask? Well, we do have a 3-way fight for the top. In fact, it's more of a 4-way fight at the moment between UKSimRacing Boss, who are the leaders by 22 points over Racing Lab and 1. And in TE Slipsport Kimi and Racing Lab Am are a further, what is 9 and 10 points away respectively, albeit it does seem to be going the way of UKSimRacing Boss, but time will tell, given the fact that anything could happen in the season finale until that final checker flag falls, as Rob Armstrong does open some races early this season, picking up key results when it looked so it was all not going his way, with drivers getting it wrong in the final minutes of each race day. But as we get set to go racing in, ladies and gentlemen, we are only, what is there now, 3 minutes away from going into the qualifying session. And as we do say hello there to Matt Edmondson, we can see him there. And so there's been a session issue, so qualifying is 1 shot tonight. Well, that does seem to be a little bit of an oddity there. We'll check our notes with regards to the session format, but we haven't heard anything so far. So I think we may be going ahead, but we'll have to wait to see what happens in qualifying. But we do say hello there to Medbo, and also we say hello to Chris Eddersford, who's tuned in, head of UKSimRacing, and we're glad to have you tuned in, Chris, and I hope you're doing well. But to those of you tuning in right now who haven't said hi, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here at UKSimRacing, and indeed all are welcome, whether it be on the circuit, alternatively as a spectator, or even just as part of the community. And we'll come on to very shortly how you can become part of the UKSimRacing community as the Racing Forces driver here here of Darren Orkett makes his way up towards his turn number 6 into the second hairpin in the number 86 car. As he heads into the braking zone here, well, what can we expect today? Well, it's a 90-minute race. From what we gather, it's going to be one that's all about those pit stops and then when's the right time to pit and whether you're in a pack. And if you can fuel save as well, then all the better, given the fact that for our drivers, with the sheer volume of pit stops, and I've been hearing rumours down in the paddock that our drivers are looking at a potential free-stop strategy today to take some tyres on towards the end of the race, but not in the early stage of the race. Keep in mind, of course, they can change 2 tyres at the same time as taking on the fuel. It's about the same time in the pit lane, but changing any more tyres in a single go, you are going to spend a bit more time stationary. But as our drivers make the way on around, we have had confirmation there from Chris in the YouTube chat to say it is going to be one-shot qualifying for all our drivers. So all our drivers have already one lap available to them, so a little bit of surprise there. Surprise to be sure, but a welcome one perhaps. It's definitely going to spice up the qualifying session, and with a grand total of 27 drivers here, we do see returning as of today as well, Satinder Dinsa, the D6 corporate driver, making his way through the back of the turn number 12. And whilst we do have 1.5 minutes to go before we head into qualifying, we'd just like to remind you that if you have been a long time viewer of UKSimRacing's broadcast or alternatively a supporter of the community, and if you've ever wondered how you could potentially give back or support UKSimRacing further, did you know there's a quick way to do so via our affiliates? But UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swilio and Meta Sim Race Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And if you head to our website, that's uksimracing.co.uk today, the website up here on screen very shortly, and there is our website where you can see there's a button at the top which takes you to our Discord. Now that button is very useful for 2 key things. Being part of our Discord community is a mandatory requirement if you ever want to be on the grid for a UK Sim Racing series, so you'll be meeting that requirement by default. Secondly, you'll be part of a wonderful community of individuals very like-minded who enjoy sim racing and real-world motorsport as well. But also in that Discord, our affiliates do provide some discount codes only available in our Discord, and if you do use those as part of a purchase, we use the consumer get a discount, which works out brilliantly for you, but it also works out for us at UK Sim Racing for the simple reason that we get a kickback from your purchase. But really what we should say is it works out for everybody as a collective at UK Sim Racing, because we are a non-profit organisation, and with that in mind, it does mean that every penny that is made through our affiliate purchase will go back into funding future series, including future editions of the GT3 League, but also the Porsche Cup and plenty more to come in 2023. And indeed, we do have, in fact, I believe, an endurance series coming up in the near future, so plenty more to look forward to. And do remember, a little purchase could go a long way in support of UK Sim Racing. But I can tell you one thing that could go a very long way right now in terms of this race tonight, and that is in the one-shot qualifying session, our drivers trying to find what is the best possible lap time, and they've only got one opportunity to do it. So you'll see the clock there at the top says they've got 10 minutes available, but in actuality it's a lot less than that, as we see Matt Maddox making his way out of the pit lane for BDM Racing as he rolls his way on the inside there at turn number 1. Interesting pit lane, the fact you do have a very solid wall on the outside. It's a very tight run through the corner. Turn 1's tight already, and then with the pit lane exit it gets ever tighter, and emerging into turn number 4 very rapidly indeed. And as he makes his way out of turn at number 4 and up towards turn number 6, meanwhile we do look from Matt Maddox to Oyvind Breivik, who makes his way out in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. But coming down towards turn at number 4, are there any cars, we ask ourselves, which could be the stronger cars here today? Not really, in fact, given the fact it does seem to be quite level in the GT3 class based on the current balance of performance. The Ferrari very strong in the slipstream, it should be said. It's got one of the highest top end speeds, but it is very slow in reaching that top speed, and indeed any slipstream it can gain will be highly beneficial to the car. But at the other end of the spectrum, we do have the beast from Germany, which is the Mercedes AMG Evo, and well, this car is 6.3 litre V8 engine, naturally aspirated, absolutely roars to life on the acceleration zones and gets up to 6th gear like no other. But in between all of this, the one car which is going to suffer to a degree on the extended straight, but in return will gain in the infield section, is the Porsche 911 GT3R. And as we do see the 23 driver here of Mark Davison making his way up towards turn number 7, well, he'll be focusing all around the corners of the bus stop chicane as well, and running as little rear wing as possible to give himself the highest possible top end speed. And it will be a balancing act here. Our drivers will try and lower their wing as much as possible in order to give themselves that top end speed and stay clear of their rivals. But as our drivers get set to go on to their one and only qualifying laps here, it's one-shot qualifying, as we've been informed. Well, we do look to Darren Orkett as he heads up towards the start-finish line, and we jump aboard with Orkett for the reference lap. making his way in towards turn at number 1 and getting ready to head onto the brakes here. It's a long braking zone going all the way down to what is their second gear as he turns in and just misses the tyre barrier and heading out the corner now, up through the gearbox into third, very shortly up into fourth gear, bring the car over to the left-hand side for turn number 4, into the horseshoe hairpin, braking about 75 metres from corner apex down to second gear, again on the power nice and early as he feeds the throttle in and heads up towards turn number 6. Now building up the speed here, into turn number 5, brings the car to the right-hand side and turns it to make the apex as he comes through the left and into the right-hander, onto the brakes once again. But here, braking towards the far distance before turning the car in for an early apex, bring the car through in second gear, and now back on the throttle and heading up towards turn number 7. Into the braking zone shortly and braking out what is the 100-metre board and going all the way down to second gear and get back on the throttle as soon as possible. You've got to wind the car up here and let it go as he makes his way back onto the oval and all the way out the gearbox now. Little by little, the 6-cylinder turbo-supported engine of the BMW makes its way all the way round and up towards the bus stop chicane. Now as he gets ready to head onto flatter ground, with the banking very quickly easing out, albeit there is a slight banking on the back straight here at Daytona, albeit it's not that noticeable, but you can just see it. And as he heads into the bus stop chicane, braking there, the 100-metre ball coming down to fourth gear, gets a bit of understeer though on cold tyres, and Norket just about keeps it in track limits as he now makes his way on through the bank of turn number 12 to complete the lap. But Darren Norket there definitely having some difficulty on the tyres, and as he makes his way around, we say hello there to Carl McGrath, who's cheering on Darren Norket. The Racing Forces drivers in full support of one another as Norket heads to the timing line where he's got a long run here. He's not allowed to dip below the yellow line and heads towards the timeline. But what's it going to be? Sixth gear, 174 miles an hour as he crosses the line. And well, for Darren Norket, it's a 144.711. It's 9 tenths slower compared to Martin Tillin. And I think that understeer at the bus stop chicane cost him at least 4 tenths of giving the relative comparison. But as more drivers come towards the end of that, oh, goodness me, Casper Broughton again is very wrong on what was his cool down lap. The car disintegrating, it would seem. Albeit speaking of disintegrating cars, you saw the Japanese Super GT at Suzuka earlier this weekend. We saw the car disintegrate there in the real world of motorsport, and we saw a similar thing there for Casper Brotner. But onto the brakes, Joe Rankin goes P4 for CHR Motorsport in the Pro class. A couple more drivers still out. They're trying to get a lap together, including Matt Strand. Eric Rose has taken provisional pole in the Pro class at a 44.147. But what can Strand do here in the Audi R8? That V10 engine roars, but is it going to be enough? It's only P5 there for Strand at 45.122. Sharples takes P2 in the class. Keep your eyes on Sharples. He's looking for the win here today, of course, to even things up, but he's not going to take pole position. And with that for Sharples, I believe the dream is already over with regards to leveling it versus what is Peter Cox in the Pro class. Therefore, there is no means, unless somebody else can find a way of bending space and time. But for Sharples, I don't think nobody's going to be able to here, and Eric Rosef will take that pole in the Pro class, albeit Paul Robson right now making his way all around. But as we've only got, I believe, Robson on the lap currently, and we've also got Matt Edmondson. In fact, James Conley's just left the pit lane as well, and he's on his warm-up lap. Mark Davidson on a lap as well. And as our drivers head on around, well, meanwhile, we do look to what is Paul Robson still as he powers his way through the left-hand return at number 8, and heading in towards the bus stop chicane here. This time we'll see the run through the chicane, albeit from a third-person perspective rather than on board. And well, you'll see just how much stability he has to try and feed it into the car. But in fact, misses braking zone entirely, and Robson going straight on there in the car, bouncing across the grass, catches it just in time. It's a tiny tap to the wall, but he won't get a qualifying now, and that is Robson's sessions done and dusted as Matt Edmondson makes his way around in the Ferrari 488 and powering his way all the way up towards the bus stop chicane now. And with this Ferrari, a bit of an all-rounder, one of the most popular GT3s in iRacing, given the fact it does have its own dedicated official series, the Ferrari Fix, which is available at C-Class, licensed on the road racing spectrum. And as Edmondson makes his way through turn number 12, he'll be one of our last two drivers to set a lap time as Mark Davidson goes P2 in the elite class, P3 overall, with Eric Rosef currently P2 overall, your pro pole sitter provisional. But I don't think anyone's going to dethrone him now as Edmondson heads to the line. Well, if he can get a valid lap on the board, this will put him somewhere out the order. But what's it going to be? He goes purple in the final subsector for the AM class. He goes P3 on a 44.910. That's only a 10th of a Johnson's pole time. A nice lap there from Edmondson, and James Conley goes on to what will be the final lap of this qualifying session as we jump on board with the Ferrari driver and listen in. The wonderful sound there of the Ferrari's V8 engine was this engine now gradually being phased down in favour of the 6-cylinder in the Ferrari 296 GT3, which made its debut in GT World Challenge earlier this year with Emil Frey Racing. But as James Connie makes his way through there, through his left-hand turn number 5 and in towards 6, running in the Valentino Rossi-inspired colours there. The number 46 striker coming on through, a little bit of understeer there on the bounce in towards the apex go. You can just see the front end hypersensitive to the bumps in the road. And he heads up towards turn at number 7, braking on down there to second gear. Nice early apex use, plenty of apex go to help rotate the car, and powering out here. A very aggressive exit, not letting the car flat to the outside wall. Instead, turn it through nice and early, and up through the gearbox he goes. And this is where the throwing now starts here, a little bit of a proverbial wall. As you can see, holding in 5th gear, waiting to get to the 6th, just letting the car build up to its maximum, heading to 163 miles an hour before upshifting and continue to build speed. And now very shortly onto the brakes here for the bus stop chicane, chucks it in 4th gear, coming through the left into the right, drops to 3rd there to help rotate the car. Will be a little bit less stability by dropping a gear, but imagine it, Connie now powering out. It's a smooth application as he comes on through turn number 12. What's it going to be for Connie here? It's going to be a personal best in every subsector compared to the previous times that we've seen. But will it be enough to put him right up there in the AM class? Could he find himself going for glory in the AM class today, or will he have to battle from the midfield? Well, he's got 44.795 to beat from Johnson. As Connie comes to the timeline, it is going to be and 145.878, so for Connie it's only good enough for P9 in the AM class, but that's your final qualifying lap. It's one shot qualifying complete, and well, in the end it will be Martin Tillin who takes over on elite pole, but in the pro class it'll be Eric Rosev who takes P2 on the grid, and then in the AM class it's going to be Mark Johnson who takes pole position, P7 on the grid. We definitely have a plethora of AMs here today, well, in fact 13 AMs in attendance. We then have a grand total with 10 pros and then only 4 elites, so definitely it's going to be the battle the pros and the AMs today, and while our elite drivers, we're hoping they don't end up getting pulled into the battles. But as our drivers get ready to go racing, we've only got a minute to go here, and well, we do have a bit of limitation at the moment. Of fact, our cameras do seem to be focused there on what is the run in towards turn number 1. But whilst we are waiting to go racing here, very sunny day here at the Daytona circuit, and in terms of those weather conditions, as we do bring them up on the right hand side of your screen, where you can see here that we currently do have that 46 degree track temperature, so it has grown a little bit, albeit ambient temperature only 19 degrees centigrade, and I would imagine given the partial cloud around here, we are going to see those track temperatures stay very high, and therefore tyre degradation will be a major factor when we do go racing, for the simple reason our drivers will be feeling that tyre temperature surface and how much it picks up over the course of the racing, but also it does mean that our drivers will be able to switch their tyres on nice and early. But as we get set and ready to go, 10 minutes complete in this qualifying session, and we very shortly make our way over to the grid for our final racer today. So as our drivers make their way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for the season finale. It is Martin Tillin who takes pole position over on in the elite class for Tiki Simsport Corporate, joined on the front row by the pro pole sitter of Eric Rosev in the McLaren. Mark Derrison starts off our second row for UKSimRacing Hunt, joined by Darren Sharples the privateer, and then Darren Orkett for Racing Forces, and Richard Jones a line up on row number 3. Row 4 goes to the Ampere, Mark Johnson who takes AM pole position in P7 for UKSimRacing Moss and Tiki Simsport Kimmy's John Doble, with Matt Edmondson starting P9, followed up by James Rankin from CHA Motorsport who completes the top 10. On row number 6, it's Simon Andre Livingston and Stein Arsani, the Racing Lab AM1 pairing. And then behind them on row number 7, it's Matt Strand from Racing Lab AM, who is joined by Daniel Pays for Old Dudes and Cars. Frank Klein for Tiki Simsport Toa starts off with your 8th row of the grid, joined by Racing Lab AM's Oyvind Breivik, with Marvin Cruz and Rob Armstrong completing your 9th row. And following behind the UKSimRacing Hunt driver of Armstrong, it's James Conley and Tiki Simsport Corpus Satinder Dinsa, who complete your top 20 on row number 10. Then on row 11, it's Thomas Barget, the privateer, joined by the elite driver of Ryan Davis. A difficult qualifying session for the Tiki Simsport Kimmy driver, no doubt about that. He's got it all to do in the race. And then Casper Brotner starts off our 12th row for Old Dudes in Cars, joined by Brandon Hay, P24, in one of his weaker qualifying sessions are late. And then heading on to what is the final full row of the grid, the 13th row, Paul Robson for CHR Motorsport, joined by Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsport. And on the last row of the grid, P27, last but not least, it's Matt Maddox for BDM Racing. Not getting a valid time on the board, but can he make it work from the back of the grid? Well, let's find out as the safety car pulls away, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for us to almost go racing, and well, it's only a partial formation lap, but as all of our drivers get themselves set and ready to go, well, it's going to be 90 minutes of racing action, and Martin Tillin will be the one to take us to the green. The start zone has been identified for our drivers in the run past the pit lane, and Tillin will be the one who dictates when we do go racing for the final time. And can Tillin find a way to stay one step ahead and most importantly bring home the run-up spot in the elite class versus Davison, Norkett and Davies? And in the pro class, can Sharples make it a win to end on a high, or will Eric Rosev finally find the win in the McLaren MP4 12C that he's been pushing for all season? And in the AM class, Mark Johnson took pole position there, but Daniel Pace does have the points and drop score advantage, so can Johnson overhaul the deficit? Well, we are making our way on to what is now the start-finish straight, and very shortly the safety car will pull away, and Martin Tillin, holding about 56 miles an hour, will take us racing. The safety car pulls away, we get ready. And Tillin goes early, it's lights out and away we go. 90 minutes of Daytona for the season finale of Season 10 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League. And Tillin catching everyone sleeping into turn number 1. But as they roar their way down the braking for the first time, cold brakes, cold tyres, and everyone has to be careful here as they head onto the anchors. Tricky opening corner, and that outside line proving to be a very difficult one over the course of many a year of racing. And as they make their way all the way down towards turn number 4, now we'll start to see the battles on the brakes here as looking into the midfield. Marvin Cruz coming up very hot. Oh goodness me, there's already an incident in front and further contact there as it looks like Cruz being given a bit of a bump along by James Conley. But as they make their way now, well, we have had an early incident into turn number 4. We're not quite sure what started it, but we've seen the consequences of it, and we'll get a look back at that very shortly. But multiple drivers there having to react to the scene of the crash at the horseshoe hairpin. But as we look to Matt Strand here chasing after Stephen Andre Livingston, Strand getting 3 places overall, 1 in class already. But a lot of our drivers here find themselves being adjusted in the field as Daniel Pace trying to go on the offensive versus Steinar Sani. And well, Daniel Pace gaining 1 place in class, much like Sani, but not gaining versus his rivals for overtakes. As they make their way on towards the bank in the turn at number 8, and drawing the way around right now, we'll start to see the Mercedes AMG open up its legs versus the BMW. It's the battle of the 2 German machines, and well, who is going to come out on top in the run down towards the bus stop chicane this time? I think it will be Pace who backs off here by comparison, not close enough to look for the move. Meanwhile, Brandon Hay versus Joe Pinder. Hay trying to go around the outside into the chicane. This is going to be bold here for the number 96 driver. Pinder defends, but Brandon Hay gets it done. He shuts the door firmly as they make their way through 10, but now Pinder have the opportunity to come back in the draft, albeit the draft not as pronounced as it used to be in the GT3 class with the update in the previous season. And as they make their way through turn number 12, we can see Pinder starting to fall back. He'll gain the toe very gradually, but not enough to really attack. But after 1 lap of racing, it's Martin Tillin who leads ahead of Eric Rosev P2, followed by Mark Davison P3, Darren Sharples P4, ahead of Richard Jones P5, Darren Norkett P6, John Doble, your AM leader at the moment, P7, having a brilliant start then, moving into the lead of the class, ahead of Mark Johnson P8, followed by Stephen Andre Livingston P9, and then we have Matt Strand, the pro, P10, Vesta Rez and Daniel Pace, all bit side by side here with Steinar Sani. Sani backs out through 3, and as they make the way into the brakes there for horseshoe, it does want to say Daniel Pace gets the move done, and Pace 9, he's got to make headway and make it as soon as possible if he wants to take that AM Championship crown. And I suspect the number 8 driver absolutely fired up today, given the fact that what is a fleeting dream has now become a very real reality as he makes his way up towards turn number 6 and the opportunity to take the championship. But as they make the way through at turn number 6, meanwhile further behind, Joe Pinder side by side with Brandon Hay, and both drivers here of 2 different classes enjoying the overall battle. I think Brandon Hay's got other ideas. He wants P3 in the Pro Championship. Joe Pinder, by comparison, just wants to get a move along, get a great result here to follow in the footsteps of his tutor of Håkon Grebstad, not in attendance today, but most likely tuning in. And as they make the way through turn number 7, well, a bit of an argy-bargy there between the Newbridge Esports Private Team, the Ignium Motorsport team driver, and in return, Joe Pinder now being made to battle with Ryan Davies as the 2 Porsche drivers go side by side through the banking of 8, and as they power their way on down. And meanwhile, Mark Johnson further up the road, looking for the move here versus John Doble up the inside into the bus stop chicane, and the UKSimRacing Moss driver has found the move for the lead of the AM class. But do keep in mind, this is a long race, and with it we've got a lot of fuel saving to be factored into the racing, and I think some drivers here will be simply letting other drivers go, albeit with the expectation they'll be able to switch the place back later on, as we see there James Conley creeping towards the pit lane on the underside of what is the yellow line. And as they make the way up towards turn at number 1 once again, well, this time it will be Stephen Andre Livingston who's trying to chase down what is there, I believe, Steinar Sani, who's jumped ahead of him, in fact, and just behind is Frank Klein, as Klein here for TE Supersport Tyre trying to get into the mix as well. So they make the way in towards turn at number 1, with the head onto the brakes here in the number 33 car. Well, for Klein, it's all about keeping calm and carrying on here, having made a reasonable start of the 6, 1 place gained in the AM class, and what is 2 overall. As he heads onto the brakes behind Livingston, staying close, not able to pounce right now, but again a long way for these drivers. And as we look from them. Back up to Darren Sharples. Sharples under pressure from Richard Jones. The Honeds racing machine all on the offensive versus the Audi, the privateer of Sharples, as they make the way out to turn number 6. And Sharples chomping at the bits, have an opportunity to try and pick up one more win this season. Will be Eric Rose. They've already put in 3 seconds between them as Norcat up the inside there at Jones. I think right now the Racing Forces driver has got a little bit impatient and decided he wants to take things in his own hands. They make the way through the left-hander at turn number 8. But coming through the banking and down towards the bus stop chicane once again. Further behind them, Ryan Davies and Joe Pinder exchanging places here as if it stocks in the straight market as they make the way down towards turn number 9 as they power the way all the way out towards the bus stop chicane. This time I would imagine that Pinder will probably hold the inside and just lift off the throttle slightly. In fact, he's going to go racing line and Davies will just tuck in. Davies will be able to save quite a bit of fuel. Again, the fact he's already almost 8 seconds off of Darren Norcat in P3 in the elite class. Well, Ryan Davies definitely will need to try and do a lot more fuel saving if he wants to try and work his way around to the battle for the elite podium on strategy alone. It's going to be quite a difficult task here. I think he's definitely had a bit of an upset hand with regards to the fact he started so far down the order. He's gained 6 places overall, but the biggest gainer so far since the start of the race is Joe Pinder in front. 11 places gained overall, and also in the AM class 5 places gained. Joe Pinder avoided all the carnage into the opening corners. Meanwhile here, Frank Klein looking around the outside of Stephen Andre Livingston as they come through turn number 1, gets the car stopped. But in doing so, they're on the marbles. He's just not got any rotation. And Brandon Hay now trying to go inside to outside in towards turn number 4. Klein defends the inside here. Oh, the brakes comes in very hot. And as he gets the car stopped, there's a car around. And I believe that is in the form of what is. I'm trying to understand. Well, Frank Klein going wide there to get the car stopped just in time. But I believe we may have had the CHR Motorsport car James Rankin pointing in the wrong direction as they all try and get themselves set back up. Frank Klein there just making a brief mistake after the exit of the corner, and the TE Sport tyre driver's now got it all to do once again as he powers his way on through. That gives us a bit of breathing room here to take a look back what happened on the opening lap, and in particular what happened at turn number 4. As we look towards Matt Edmondson battling with James Rankin, a bit of netco contact there between the two drivers by the looks of things. I think this set up a chain reaction. Rankin then came back onto the field, Marvin Cruz being the first driver to really be in the main run of the contact there, and the CHR Motorsport machine in the end just being in the wrong place at the wrong time for everybody to crusade into. We take another look back at that, and well, this time from James Rankin with the camera initially, you can see look at there, the car being kicked around, and as he came to a halt, well, everybody just making the way at speed, and nobody expecting the car to come through, but Rankin there would have been holding his brakes, but literally a passenger in his car. And in terms of drivers who came into the scene of the incident, we take a look to James Conley, and this was on board with James Conley. Keep your eyes on Marvin Cruz in the Porsche in front of him, watch what happens with regards to the concertina. Cruz doesn't know what's about to happen, then suddenly there's the BMW, everyone has to slam on the brakes, and well, Conley's got all the speed, so everybody comes into the back of one another, and James Conley there, with a heavily wounded car, had to get it stopped in time, couldn't do so, and has been limping his way back round to the pits. Thomas Barger also involved in that incident, and will definitely a disastrous start to the race for many a driver, including James Rankin and Matt Edmondson, who've had to be towed to the pits, and I believe Marvin Cruz, Thomas Barger, Ivan Breivik, and also James Conley have all been able to make it to the pits in order to get repaired and use a fast repair rather than lose a lap of the race. We take a look back at what happened to Frank Klein only moments ago, and this was in the run to turn number 4, take a bit of grass into the corner. Once the race goes very deep, a great attempt at a defence here from the TE Sport Turbo driver, but taking that evasive line around James Rankin had him almost lose the car there on the grass as he returns to the asphalt coming out of turn number 4, but still the number 33 driver showing great car control, and 10 out of 10 there for keeping it out of danger. But as we now return to your live pictures, those are the two major incidents that we've seen on the opening 10 minutes of this race thus far. We've still got the best part of 80 minutes left to go, and I think now the time will be starting to turn for our drivers from what is gaining places early on to working towards strategy. But look at the front two of the field here, with the elite leader Martin Tillin, who has been hotly chased by Eric Rosev, and as we jump aboard with McLaren MB4 driver, well there, Tillin having a very slow run out the corner, and I think Eric Rosev gained in the lead, albeit as we look back from the rear of the McLaren driver's car, you can see the number 91 Porsche there just lurking in the tow, and I wonder if Tillin here might be intentionally lifted off to let Rosev use a bit more fuel and give himself the opportunity to save some as they head up towards turn number 1. And you've got to be careful when you do things like that, because the driver behind, if they're following you directly in the wheel tracks and they don't notice that you're lifting off, or if they come straight through the back of you, then it's on you, given the fact that you have been lifted off the throttle. They're intentionally sliding the car, and arguably some could say dangerously, but that's the way it works. And sometimes in the motorsport you do need to pick the right place to be at the right time in order to go for the moves, alternatively make it work on the strategic front. As they power the way out of turn number 4 and up towards turn number 6. Four drivers right now definitely settling on down inside the top 10. Albeit Mark Davison just behind this, and well, Tillin and Davison battling for the elite win here. Albeit Mark Davison not in contention for that runner-up spot in the elite class, but he'd love to add a win to his name before the end of the season as they make the way through. And then we look back to Darren Sharples, P4 overall, P2 in the pro class, and trying to chase down Eric Rosev. And I think with the back and forth that's going on for the top 3, Darren Sharples may be able to gain a little bit later on in the race. Should he be able to just simply capitalise? But the problem that the Audi driver's got here, he's got nobody to assist him on the straight in terms of giving him a tow and helping him fuel save. So what Sharples gains by pushing now, he's going to lose in the pits by simply having to take more fuel. But as we look back to Mark Johnson, your AM leader at the moment, and well, to give you an update on the AM Championship, should things finish as they are, albeit it's a bit premature to do this, and the commentator's curse could come into effect. But Daniel Pay's P2 in the AM class, Johnson at P1. If things finish as they currently are, it would be Daniel Pay's who takes the AM Championship crown as we understand it. But Johnson powers his way out of the bus stop chicane, falls a bit behind Richard Jones. But the Mercedes there losing a lot of speed through the corners, and I've seen a number of you talking about the performance aspects of the Mercedes AMG Evo machine, saying about how strong it is on the straights, but in the corners it really struggles, and that's because of the front engine rear-wheel drivetrains machine's nature of wanting to understeer through the medium to high speed corners and also corner entry, but also having this absolutely sometimes aggravating desire to oversteer on power in second and third gear. And well, a bit of, oh goodness me, there's contact there between what is Darren Orkett and Mark Johnson. I think that was even more netco contact between the two of them. We'll try and take a look back at that very shortly, but that's not the way they've wanted it to go. And Daniel Pay's now comes through to take the AM lead here in a dramatic turn of events in the opening stage of this race. And well, for Mark Johnson, can he carry on the car as is, or will he need to get it repaired? And the UKSimRacing Moss driver will not be pleased about how this has gone, given the fact I think it was just expected to be a quick swap with Darren Orkett, 4th position overall. As they made the way side by side to turn number 1, it's been anything but that. And Johnson under pressure now for Ryan Davies, with John Doble catching up. And keep in mind, this is the John Doble who took the win and Detroit all the way back in the early half of the season. And the TU Sport Kimmy driver was absolutely fired up after that one, unable to replicate it thus far, but still the number 77 driver here in the Porsche 911 GT3R showing a lot of pace. And if he can carry this up over the entirety of the race, he's not out of the hunt for a potential win in class as he makes his way onwards towards the bus stop chicane. But we look to Davies versus Johnson as they come on through on the banking here, and as they head down towards the bus stop chicane, well, Davies holds the low line, that'll be the inside. And when you do go high, keep it in mind, of course, builds up a bit of momentum, but it does give a wider circumference to navigate. And as he tucks in behind, Johnson just staying at the toe here and letting Davies pull him along. And again, the damage to the aero package on that Mercedes will cost him a couple of miles an hour on the top end of each and every extended straightaway. And for Johnson now, it will be a big question of damage limitation, as Darren Orkett has had to make his way into the pit lane. We believe he's had to be towed to the pitch due to the damage picked up after that contact, but Johnson staying alive right now, and we'll get you a replay of what exactly happened very shortly. But as they charge their way onto what for them will be now lap number 8, and plenty more to be accrued before all is said and done. Johnson looking around the outside, he's not phased after what happened in turn 1 last time around. Onto the brakes here, albeit Davies defends the inside. Johnson looks all the way round, can't quite find him, and meanwhile John Doble there gets all the momentum he needs. Side by side on corner exit through 3, and as Doble closes the door there on the inside into 4, well, Mark Johnson loses out, and a beautiful move there from John Doble to take second place in the AM class. And the TU Sport Kimmy driver now also in P10 overall and trying to push on, as Matt Strand and Ryan Davies exchange places just in front. And John Doble here definitely pushing as hard as he possibly can as they break the way down. Looks up the inside here, and Matt Strand with John Doble absolutely hitting up a hot streak now, albeit there I think tempting fate a little bit too much. And whilst we do know that the brakes on the Porsche are the strongest of any car in this field, as seen this season time and time again, John Doble not willing to risk it all that early on as they make the way through turn number 7 and onto the banking once more. But as they power the way on around, we do take a look back to the instant between Darren Orkett and Mark Johnson only moments ago, and here's a replay. So you'll see Darren Orkett initially going a bit slow here, braking early into turn number 1. And as they come through, in fact, there was contact between them, it looks as though. And, well, Norquet's line there interdicting with the rear quarter panel of Johnson's car. A very unfortunate one, and as we take a look back at the instant from Norquet's perspective, the Racing Forces driver here backing off significantly, I think trying to fuel save. But what you'll see is the angle he approaches into turn number 1, understeer creeps in at this point as he tries to open up the corner. And with that, Johnson turns in on that outside line, and the two meet one another. And, well, for Darren Norquet, it's a disastrous end to what was the start of that lap, and with it a tow to the bits. As we continue to watch our races make the way around, we're hearing that Casper Bront has been involved in an incident off camera, but we look back to the battle for P2 in the AM class between Doble and Johnson as they come into turn number 1 at this time. And John Doble here with a bit of a tap on the rear by Johnson, and Mark Johnson's race is going from good to bad to worse, and for John Doble, now it's going to open up the field even more. And well, that means now that Johnson holds on to P2 in the AM class, but behind Steinar Sani getting close, and within 4 attempts, Sani will be looking at some figure where they're all going to knock 50 shades out of one another. I can take a run-up spot here in the race, if not the win as well, given the fact that Daniel Payne is 7.5 seconds up the road. But as they charge on through and heading up towards what is turn number 6, onto the race they go, and Steinar Sani right now from Racing Lab AM1 can see his target in his sights, but can he find a way through? I think John Doe will not be too pleased with how that's played out. I can imagine Tiki Supersport in general from the pit wall may be a little bit frustrated, albeit they have got Doble and Klein together now, and well, these two do make a fantastic combination on circuit in the AM class. We've seen them in the early stage of this season working together with regards to fuel saving, and I think that's what they'll do. They'll switch strategies now and decide to work together in order to gain race time when it comes to the pit stops. As they power their way through turn at number 8 and up towards the bus for chicane once more. Meanwhile, we look from them to your race leader, Eric Rosev, who took the lead of this race a few laps ago when Martin Tillin let it go in the run through turn number 12. But I think these two are in a bit of a mutual understanding, which is we're only going to battle towards the end of the race. Should we be together on circuit? As they head up towards the left hand of turn number 1, we can see a good number of you cheering on Racing Lab and drivers today, including there in the YouTube chat with Kenneth Palswood. I do believe I may have just butchered your name, Kenneth, and if so, I do apologise. I'm still learning how to pronounce the Scandinavian names with all the accents on the letters and whatnot, but I appreciate if you can confirm where I've got that right or wrong. And whatever, I haven't butchered a name on the grid once this season, then it probably hasn't been covered by myself. That does seem to be a habit I have. But looking back to the racing action further down for the Racing Lab and drivers, well, that's him and Andre Livingston on the outside versus Frank Klein, and Klein goes very heavy on the brakes there as Rob Armstrong comes on through in the Pro class and the Mercedes in front. But meanwhile, Livingston just keeping the door open, and Klein getting the car stopped just in time. That looked to be very near the mark. Sim and Andre Livingston playing it very passively here, and I think deciding that there's a longer race to be played rather than the short-term tactical gains by holding track position. But as we look to them making their way up towards turn number 6, meanwhile just behind this is Casper Bront and chase starts Paul Robson. And well, the two CHR Motorsport cars of Robson and Rankin nowhere near each other this time around, albeit we do always see them running together normally, but it seems as though not today. And as Brotner holds on here in the position of P8, well, very shortly, and that's in the Pro class, he'll be trying to pick off what is Robson for P7, albeit they make the way out the corner, and we jump on board here with the old Duty Cars AMG driver, and well, powering his way out through the gearbox now, going all the way through, and that acceleration absolutely kicking into a barnstorm, and you can see gaining the toe. And well, that BMW, as much as it pushes, the turbo's just not going to outweigh the V8 naturally aspirated engine here. And will Robson pulls the outside, Brotner on the inside as they head down towards the braking zone, and as they do, Brotner backs out into sight. Discretion's the better part of Valor as they come through the left into right 9 and 10, and we'll gain the toe all the way around to complete the lap and go on to the next one. And as they head in towards turn number 12, Brotner now start to build the speed, and this will be seen them heading upwards of excess of 175 miles an hour as they come through the banking, and that Mercedes gaining little by little, but it looks as though in fact Brotner may be backing the car off a bit more as they make the way in towards the start-finish line now. The gap's down to 2 tenths, whilst the toe has been reduced. In terms of the fact, I think Brotner here is playing the game of the longer-term fuel saving and looking for the moves perhaps down that back straight. But as they come through turn number 1, no change between these two as they exit and come through turns 2 and 3, but they are gaining on Matt Maddox and Stephen Andre Livingston in front. But looking from them back up to Frank Klein. Klein's found his way past Rob Armstrong, and will the two exchange places. Steinar Sani's through now, and in fact Stephen Andre Livingston back behind Klein. So I think these three might be trying to work together to a degree as they roll the way through 5 and up into 6. But onto the brakes they go for the second hairpin in sequence, and as they come on through, nobody right now looking at any dicey moves here. Everyone playing the patience game as they exit the right-hander and up towards turn number 7. but powering the way up and through. And meanwhile, we do look back to Brotner versus Robson, and we're on to the brakes as they come through the left-hander. No change for now, but it does look as though Robson going a bit deep as he gets the car settled together, but can he keep the speed all the way out of round? It is going to be a bit of a challenge as they make their way in towards the bus stop chicane. Through the long left-hander they go, and heading down towards the chicane now. Brotner's close, but does he tempt it? He's going to take a bit of a peek here, but is this just simply to bleed off the toe at the exit speed? It is. So Casper Brotner putting all of his bets into battling with Robson. He's going to hold his progress back, given the fact that Rob Armstrong is only, 2 seconds further up the road in the next pack. But I think Casper Brotner may need to consider making a move soon, because all the time he's gaining fuel saving is good, but he's losing quite a bit of time. I'd say he's losing at least half a second a lap by simply tucking in behind Robson, and will he be able to make that back on the pit stop? Time will tell in that regard, but meanwhile Frank Klein versus Rob Armstrong. That's Armstrong over P6 in the pro class, we're talking about only moments ago, who's trying to make a bit more ground. Klein covers the inside but goes deep. Armstrong cuts back, but Klein cuts it back as well, but overdoes it there in the break. It goes overly deep, and Rob Armstrong picks off the target in the end, albeit for Klein. Frank Klein, they're not going to give out without a fight, and as they make their way in towards turn number 4, number 33 driver, they're trying to put the BMW every which way through turn number 1, but in the end becoming unstuck as he makes his way out to the right-hander and up towards turn number 6 as he charges all the way up towards the braking zone. What it is going to be about here, Klein trying now to catch back up on Armstrong. I think he will be able to do so, but will he be able to find a way on through, given that Mercedes tenacity just to gain as much speed as possible on the straights but lose it all in the corners? But the one driver who's on the back of this battle now, and we jump on board with Matt Maddox and BDM Racing, who looks for a cutback exit there in turn number 7, and this is the Matt Maddox that we've seen really grow in the season, albeit fighting a bit of oversteer there, power oversteer as he transitions the road surface. May not have been too visible, but as he made his way from the road course and indeed the runoff area onto the embankment, you could just see how the BDM Racing Porsche did not want to go in a straight line. He had to fight, and that's cost him 2 attempts in the run on Livingston, because otherwise that would have been a gargantuan run as they made their way down towards the bus stop chicane. But in the end, the number 20 driver here just having to follow through as they come left into right and right into left. Meanwhile, in front, it's going to be side by side as Armstrong to the wall there on the exit of the chicane. I wonder if there's been a little bit of an altercation between Wes Klein and Armstrong that kicked that off, as they power their way up through turn number 12. Well, Armstrong losing all of the speed, but again, look how much speed that Mercedes builds from its own volition, and Maddox trying to follow through with Livingston here as they make their way up towards turn number 1. Side by side behind as well for what is there, Robson and Brotner as they head into towards the braking zone. It's going to be almost 3 wide here onto the anchors they go. Maddox looking around the outside versus Armstrong. Livingston defends the inside. Maddox goes very deep there, the marbles catching him out as he tries to catch the car. What he's going to do now is give Robson and Brotner a little bit of a dilemma, which is they've got a Porsche in front that's trying to regain its speed. Robson thinks about it but defends on the inside instead. Meanwhile, Brotner trying to go all the way around the outside as we've got our first pit stops of the day. 21 minutes into the race, so that gives us an indication of how long these cars can go. And as they power their way up towards turn number 6, right now everybody lined astern for a brief moment. In terms of pit stops, it's a Richard Jones, Brandon Hay, Eric Rosev and Satinda Dinsa who we have had, and I believe we have had anybody else in the pit lane. No, we have not so far, so we have had 4 stoppers. Well, in fact, we had Eric Rosev as well, and Eric Rosev had a very long pit stop, as meanwhile Armstrong there side by side with Maddox, and Maddox made to go wide and losing the car, and he leads to a double whammy with what was there, Paul Robson and Casper Brotner, both drivers collecting the wayward Porsche, or being collected by the wayward Porsche we should say, and the BDM Racing driver to be towed to the pit. And what a difficult end to what was a good opening stint from the number 20 driver, but as he gets himself back and ready to go. And meanwhile, making the way down pit lane now, Martin Tilling from the lead of this race, and Mark Davidson as well, keeping in mind that Eric Rosev was the first driver of the top 3 to pit. He's making his way through what is currently the run up towards turn number 6, in fact the exit of turn number 6, but we may see a bit of a switch up with strategies here. But yes, we confirm there for Thomas Aspalga and also what is the rest of the Racing Lab and supporter crew. Larry Rosev has taken his first pit stop of the day. It was quite a long pit stop as well, almost a minute's worth of pit time, so I believe he may have changed all 4 tyres as well as taking on fuel, and therefore for the Norwegian it is now all going to be about running those tyres to the end of the race and also seeing if he can bounce that fuel tank out as he closes up back to the back of Dinsa as they make their way on the back straight. But this is going to work out for Rosev quite nicely because he'll gain the toe and therefore he'll gain some lap time. But already Tilling, Davison and Davies are leading the pits, and to put this in perspective, Rosev making his way for the bus stop chicane. Tilling right now back out into what is effectively the lead of this race, and he's making his way in towards turn number 4, and that's what happens when you only go for a fuel stop and potentially changing 1 or 2 tyres in the fuel time. 21 seconds stationary. Martin Tillin re-leads this race ahead of Mark Davidson, and behind we do have Darren Sharp, who's in P3, who right now trying to make a bit more ground. He's the leader of the Pro class, but do keep in mind we are expecting all our drivers to change their tyres, all 4 tyres at least once. Given the tyre degradation rates around here at Daytona, we can't foresee anybody going the whole distance on a single set of the compound. To do so, well, that would be absolutely brilliant if anybody's able to pull it off. I think also they'll have very little compound left available come the end of it. But meanwhile, we do look to, what is this, the Dean Sell looking up the inside of Casper Brotner. Nice move there for the T6 corporate drivers. Brotner comes back at him now. It's going to be a drag race out the corner. It's the Italian stallion versus the German efficiency. And as they make the way through turn number 5, will Dieter backs on, tucks back in. I think recognising that his battle's not with Brotner. His battle instead is with the likes of Steinar Stanley and Marvin Cruz, with Joe Pinder and John Doe a further, what is 5 and 7 seconds behind respectively. As they make their way out to the right hand at turn number 6 and up towards 7. We've had our first pit stops of the day in terms of scheduled stops, and we look to Marvin Cruz in particular. Keep in mind, the number 90 driver from Germany was one of the drivers who got caught up in that major altercation coming out of turn 3 into 4 in the opening lap. In fact, he was the driver who was the first one to be collected effectively by the wayward car James Rankin, and then James Conley gave him a little bit of a boost out of the corner with the contact. But as the number 90 car makes its way now up towards the bus stop chicane, I think he will be letting Armstrong go. In fact, no, he decides not to, but we can see here as he makes his way onwards towards the end of this lap in the time of Livingston. Cruz definitely on course to battle for a top 5 finish in the AM class here. Darren Hall gets into the pits for his first pit stop in terms of scheduled pit stop. He's already had one for repair work, understandably after that contact with Mark Johnson at turn number 1 a few laps ago. But Marvin Cruz here, definitely a man to watch out for. He seems to be making a lot of progress, albeit he goes below the yellow line and into the pit lane now. Marvin Cruz, in fact, having to come in for another pit stop, so I believe, in fact, out of sequence and having to come to the pits originally for repair work, and that's very unfortunate given the fact he did look to be on a good recovery there, but now the strategy holds him at bay. But meanwhile, looking from our AM drivers falling down the field, so our AM drivers at the very top of their respective field, it's Daniel Pace for Old Dudes in Cars. And when I caught up with Daniel Pace in the build-up to today, we had a few moments in the pit lane. He was saying to me about the fact that he has considered all this season the fact that Mark Johnson has been the stronger Mercedes driver of the two of them, but still he's been very excited to go into the racing today. And he's been doing his best to try and keep up with Mark Johnson in terms of the relative practice and whatnot, but he has been feeling as though it's been a bit of a David versus Goliath situation where he's David and Johnson is Goliath. But I can tell you one thing right now, with Johnson 8.2 seconds away and the relative pace of the two showing that Johnson is being matched by Pace, we could see here Daniel Pace carry on with this lead, albeit we do need to keep in mind that in terms of pit stops, both drivers have only taken a fuel stop so far, so we have got a long way to go. But just to point out then, we do have a number of you asking the question, what happened to Eric Rosef in the pit lane? Well, as far as our data can confirm, he did have a 1 minute stationary time in the pits. We can't give you information as to whether he's exactly just changed tyres or taken fuel or a combination of the pair, but we do know that Rosef had a very long pit stop and did not opt, by the sounds of things, to have the standard stop. Now, was there potentially a stop penalty, perhaps for speed in the pit lane? Again, we don't have that information available, but Rosef did have a 1 minute pit stop in terms of that stationary time, and that's why he drops all the way from the lead of the Pro class and battling for the overall win, all the way down to P5 in Pro, and with his P13 overall as he looks up the inside here of teammate Steinar Sani, albeit Rosef a privateer, not representing the team in the Teams Championship of Racing Lab AM. As he comes down to the braking zone, Rob Armstrong comes on through here and says, well, don't mind if I do. Meanwhile, behind Robson also makes it a three-way pass, and will Steinar Sani, you've got to feel for, in the fact that BMW M4 driver, I think he was letting one go and thought, okay, it's my teammate gone, and then Armstrong came on through, and I think Sani thought, okay, you get a free pass, and then Robson comes on through and says, well, don't mind if I do, and I think Sani at that point felt, okay, well, I've got to turn in for turn 1 at some point, but nobody wants to let me. But as they make their way up towards turn number 6, right now the Norwegian definitely being very kind to everybody around her, I think focusing as much as possible on the strategy of this race. But I do wonder if we'll see a bit of elbows out from Sani, given the fact he's been very passive in his approach to this race so far. But it is a long race to go, and we're only coming towards the end of the first half now, so we've got plenty of time still in the stocks as the Norwegian heads out towards the oval banking once again from turn 7 to turn number 8. But as he comes on through, meanwhile, we do hear that Ryan Davies now being closed up to by Daniel Pace, but Richard Jones just in front. We stay with this battle between Sonny and Paul Robson for the time being. The CHR Motorsport BMW, the leader of the two. And as they come up towards the bus stop chicane, Sonny just gliding there in behind. We'll be lifting off the throttle here, going to about 75% throttle applications to just let the gap open up as a fastest lap of the race set by Matt Maddox in the AM class. And that's why you've suddenly seen the AM timing tower jump above the elite timing tower. That does seem to be a thing that occurs while timing tower when a class sets the overall fastest lap of the race. We will see classes jump up and down, but our AMs, our pros and our elites all valued equally on the grid. Nobody gets greater preference, alternatively any preferential considerations compared to the other classes around here. And as we see our drivers powering on through, and as we head into this second stage of the race at Daytona, everybody's starting to settle down and more strategy starting to play out. Everyone keeping it calm at this time. I think for good number of drivers, the thought process now will simply be on how much fuel they got. Can they make themselves go a bit longer on what is this second runner strategy today? Alternatively, will they be able to make the tyres go a bit longer than perhaps they expected? But everyone feeling comfortable, and as we do see Ryan Davies making his way up through the left-hander at turn number 7 into turn number 8. Potentially later on this evening, we will get a tune in from the pit wall at UKSimRacing Kimi and hear from Greg Zenhai and his thoughts on how the race has gone thus far. I think UKSimRacing right now will be pleased with the fact that they have Martin Tilling right out front. UKSimRacing Corper leading this race by the best part of 3 seconds ahead of Mark Davison. And in fact, as we do take a look at the overall standings here, and this puts you in the perspective of how all of our drivers fit together rather than in the individual classes. You can see it's the top two of the elite of Tilling ahead of Davison with that 3-second gap, and then we do have what is a 12-second gap all the way to your pro leader of Darren Sharples as he makes his way up through the banking there at turn number 12. And well, he's got Richard Jones only 1.6 seconds behind him and keeping him honest. But then in the AM class P6 overall, it's Daniel Pace here who finds himself in the David Hayes sandwich, where we've got elite on one side and pro on the other side of the AM leader as they power their way past the massive grandstand there and head up towards turn number 1. Well, Daniel Pace here with Hay looking up the inside, lets it go, and Daniel Pace, I think, showing what is a champion's mentality here, which he just wants the AM win. He doesn't want anything else, and even if he finishes P2 behind Mark Johnson, it will still go the way of Daniel Pace. So right now the old dudes in cars driver just thinking smart about the racing, and well, if he doesn't make any mistakes here, the commentators curse not applying as well to that. And the number 8 driver definitely looking on great form as we now look back to the class standings. And as we do, more for Pace, it's all about wearing down the time and seeing what Mark Johnson can do to find his way back. But as Johnson powers his way up through turn number 5 and in towards 6. And meanwhile, we have had a bit of an incident further on down the order, I believe, for Steinar Sani, who's had it off track. And well, we'll try and get an update on what exactly has happened to Steinar Sani shortly. He's dropped all the way down to P19, overall P8 in the AM class. And here is the aforementioned Racing Lab AM1 BMW driver. And in fact, we do have a replay coming up as to what happened to the number 78 car. And here it is. Making his way down the back straight towards the bus stop chicane. Rear of the car lets go, and that's very unfortunate. It's a nasty shunt to the tyres there, and well, the number 78 driver pointing back in the right direction, but with a heavily wounded car, and with Steinar Sani losing a lot of places as well, with what is John Doble there coming through, plus Joe Pinder, and then Matt Edmondson made his way on through, albeit Matt Edmondson a lap down, hands be towed to the pits in the open lap after that open lap incident. So therefore for Steinar Sani losing some places, but not all of them. And as soon as I say Matt Edmondson, well, doing donuts there in what is the runoff area coming out of turn number 7. I think a bit of oversteer there for the privateer and getting it wrong in the number 176 Ferrari, but now trying to make things right as he brings himself back up to speed. But a couple of drivers there making mistakes. Well, that is going to happen as tyre life starts to wear down, and those hot temperatures on the track surface will not assist in keeping those tyres alive. You've got to protect those tyres and be very careful as time wears on. As we want Joe Pinder continue to build speed as he makes his way through turn number 12, but it's going to be John Doble looking around the outside, and the two Porsche drivers here battling side by side. But this will be an indicator who's running more rear wing than the other in terms of who's able to gain. I think they're running about the same, given that Doble's got a tiny overspeed, and that will be the remnants of the toe from Pinder's car. But the EV Motorsport driver will stay on the inside, and this wheel battle on the brakes into turn number 1. Pinder locked to the inside. Doble looking to go all the way around. Pinder goes a bit deep there, but gets the car stopped just in time, and Doble can't cut it back. It's a nice defense from Pinder as they make their way out to turn number 3. We look back to the rear of the number 22 EV Motorsport machine as they come through 4. Doble getting close there, but taking a lot of apex curve, and as a result, being chucked out the corner. And a bit more of an understeer focus line compared to Pinder, and Pinder able to double the gap from 2 tenths to 4.5 tenths as they make their way in towards turn number 6. Now they do have Casper Brotner behind, and he's closed up rather rapidly. He is the pro Mercedes driver, so pressure will be building further back. But as they come out to turn number 6 in towards 7 here, he'll be lying astern for now, and Pinder's got to think about what does he do in the run towards the bus stop chicane. Does he let the place go to Doble and then try and come back in the run towards turn number 1, or does he dig in and fight this? And what I think is going to be a decision that will be made for him should Doble be able to catch up. Gap comes 2 tenths very shortly, and as they make the way over the banking now, you start to see the road surface begin to flatten out a little bit. There is a 1 degree elevation angle to the flat road surface. It's not entirely flat, but as they make the way in towards turn number 9, or Pinder holds firm there and tries to break away on the rotation through the chicane, bouncing over the curve, and as they do, well, it is going to be Doble who gets the better run here, but he has got Brotner closing in behind the Mercedes driver. We're trying to use the double tone plus the veracity of that Mercedes in order to gain the move on both in the battle for what is effectively P15 overall, but the pro driver here definitely trying to make headway. And Doble looking around the outside as he looks on towards the start-finish line. Well, it'll be a bit of a deja vu. We saw this in the previous lap, and now they do it once again. Pinder low, Doble high. Under the brakes, they go into turn number 1, and as Doble looks around the outside this time, Pinder still defends our box on apex, and Brotner tries to get the power down, but you can see that the understeer of the Mercedes and then the power oversteer, the two things that make it a very difficult car to run through the infield section. And Brotner goes all in on the brakes, goes very late in the day, and he shows that whilst the Porsche's got the stronger brakes, the Mercedes does have some braking aptitude. Brilliantly done there from Brotner, and gains the position. I don't think John Doble expected that to come from left field, but he definitely did. Came right up the inside, and as they make their way through the kick of 5 and in towards 6, well, Doble now will need to try and pull some magic of his own. But as they come out to the right-hand hairpin and up towards turn number 7, a bit more further up the field, we have had a move by Brandon Hay on Richard Jones for his 2nd place in the pro class, and this is how it was made. As they made their way into turn number 1, this is the battle between Ryan Davies, Jones and Brandon Hay, and well, there you can see Jones trying to go round the outside of Davies, and Hay just simply saying, well, if you're going to understeer deep, allow me to introduce myself to that pocket of space you've created. And Brandon Hay being very tacit in his approach, but getting it done there, the lubricant towards privateer, as then he made his way up towards turn number 6. We return back to your live pictures now, and Casper Brotner trying to chase him down. Joe Pinder as they come from left to right, over through the bus stop chicane. But as they exit out, bounce their way between the apex curves, there you can see those elevation changes in the road, or those bumps in the road we should say, and Brotner just staying back, and John Doble falling away here, and I think not able to stay with the pace that Pinder and Brotner are now delivering. I think a brief mistake on this lap potentially, but Doble falling out of sorts, and that gap now up to 1 second, and that's what happens when you do start to fall beyond a second behind the driver in front. You still have a distant toe, but not quite as much as you would have if you were in a half second, and it's around a half second toe, which is where you get the biggest benefit. But as they roll the way through the left-hand of turn number 1, and Doble, they're going for a very late apex, trying to get the car to turn for a gain on the speed, and Brotner looking for the move on Pinder, and nobody making progress here behind Joe Pinder, who's digging in. Brotner thinks about it late on the brakes once again, but Pinder wise to it, just turns in. He's got plenty of meterage between himself and his Mercedes rival. But looking from them back up to P3 in the elite class and P4 overall, this is Ryan Davies. He makes his way onwards towards turn 9 and 10, charging on down towards the bus stop chicane at the moment. Brandon Hay staying with him 4 attempts is the delta, and Brandon Hay, I think, now looking to try and gain more places overall on circuit. I think the BMW M4 driver may have an inch which he needs to scratch, which he's got a lot of pace at his fingertips, but patience will go well, and Richard Jones falling away slightly, albeit Jones will have some company behind him in the form of what is their Daniel Page. But meanwhile, cut that fall for a brief moment. This is at the exit of the bus stop chicane. That's Matt Strand pointing in the wrong direction as he tries to turn the racing lab and Audi are around, and well, has that been in contact with another car, or alternatively of his own volition? We'll get a replay of that as soon as we possibly can. But Matt Strand has fallen out of the battle for the top 3 in the pro class, and in fact drops to P5 and going very slowly here. I think Strand has got severe damage to the car, and this may be a return to the pits, a premature one at that, as he tries to bring himself back up to speed. The number 69 driver really struggling here. P6 in pro. He lets Deanster through for P13, but it's all going wrong too soon for him as he makes his way on down. Everybody roared on through, and well, you can see Joe Pinder there with Casper Rotten, the closest Rotten has been for some time. And as the Indian Motorsport driver holds the low line here, coming across the start-finish straight. We're into the brakes, they go for turn number 1. Looking around goes Brotner. Can he quite find it? No, he cannot. He tries to cut it back, but Joe Pinder just able to stop the car on a dime, time and time again. And the number 22 driver, absolute confidence there in position of the car, and Brotner being made to work for it. He's going to go around the outside instead. But the problem with this is you're going to have to go deep and onto the marbles there on the outside of the corner, and that's going to hurt the Mercedes to no end, given the fact it struggles by default to get the power down in the lower gears. And now as they make their way through turn 5 into the 6, Joe Pinder proving to be the cork in the bottle that nobody can budge. As they come through the right-hander at turn number 6, meanwhile we look from them up to Jones versus Hay versus Davies, and we ride on board here with the Honus Racing Privateer in the number 99 car. A little bit of a moment there, just getting it slightly wrong at the bus stop chicane and pushing so hard. And we'll keep an eye on the right of your pitch, and you'll very shortly see the AM leader, Daniel Payne's coming on through, albeit it's going to take some time as it is a drag race here between the Mercedes and the BMW. In fact, Payne's backing off on the outside, and we do look to the exterior cameras instead here. Drag race as they come, and as they make the way onto what for them will be very shortly lap number 23 of racing here at Daytona. Paul Jones defends. Paynes knows he doesn't need to fight this. He only needs to make ground if he feels as though he's being held up. And as they come for turn number 1, Jones holds the position for his P6 overall and P3 in the Pro class, albeit Paynes in the AM class, not fighting for a position. But meanwhile, Brandon Hay getting the move done to turn 1 versus Ryan Davies. Davies trying to come back in around the outside of turn number 4. Can't quite find him. As they exit the right-hander and up towards turn number 6 they go. Brandon Hay, well, I'm not sure what he's had for breakfast, but I can tell you one thing, the number 96 driver right now going for what would be his best performance of the season overall and in class, with a P2 in class and P4 overall, and we're good on the number 96 driver here. He's showing his fangs, but I think the only thing he's putting himself at risk of here is being leapfrogged in strategy, given the fact he'll be using a lot of fuel in order to be able to make these moves, and being the leader of the pack, well, Ryan Davies by comparison will be watching on here, and I think thinking to himself, okay, we can have the lead all you want in this battle, because at the end of the day, I'll just fuel save and leap you on strategy. But as they come onto the back straight very shortly, meanwhile we look from them to what is Paynes behind, and Paynes getting closer and closer to the back of Jones once more. Now Paynes here able to play the smart game with Johnson, in fact gaining time with these two battling back and forth. Johnson's brought the gap down from 8.5 seconds to 8 seconds as they make their way up through the bus stop chicane this time. The Paynes will know what he loses for a corner in battling. He'll gain on the straights being tucked in behind. But Johnson then making his way through the chicane. And here is the UKSimRacing Moss driver and putting in some very fast laps in class at the moment. The fastest driver out on circuit, however, if you exclude Martin Tillin as race leader, very close to Martin Tillin and lapping in the 44s. In fact, we only have 2 drivers lapping the 44s. Everybody else in the 45s or higher is Eric Rosev. And here is the Racing Lab AM Privateer as he makes his way through turn number 12. And well, the big question that was rippling through the YouTube chat time and time again is what happened to Eric Rosev. But as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, I think he may have had that change of tyres in the pits, and therefore he's going all in with it currently as he heads in towards turn number 1. We do say hello to another Racing Lab AM supporter in the YouTube chat, which is Oyvind Auckland, who is cheering on in particular Simon Andre Livingstone. And here is your Racing Lab AM1 driver, currently P4 in the AM class, and trying to chase down Frank Klein, who is 3 seconds up the road. But from them, we look to Joe Pinder and Casper Brotner as they battle side by side into turn 1. And Brotner finally finds a way on the low line this time. And Pinder, who made to go around the outside of the opening corner. And with that, Casper Brotner finally, on what is the 5th time of asking, gets the move done for the position overall of P14. And as they come charging through the right-hander, will they be able to find a move or not? We'll have to wait and see. Albeit, I think John Doe will be now itching to try and get back at Pinder, with the fact that Pinder was able to put the move on him earlier. And now for Doble, it's all about getting back in the tow. Gap down to 7.5 temps, but still not close enough to try and make an adventure of this as they roll out of the turn 6 hairpin and up towards 7. But plenty of time still on the clock, and ahead of them is Tinder Dienzer as we see the T from corporate driver in the very colourful Ferrari. Beautiful colours on that car, and well, not quite the beautiful exit at turn number 7 that Dienzer would have been looking for there. A little bit of wobble with the transition of the road surfaces, but the number 10 Ferrari driver keeping the car pointed in the right direction. And well, that's the most important thing here, not make any mistakes. We've seen many a driver getting it wrong through at turn number 7 on to include Matt Edmondson, just to name one example, albeit not to make an example of Edmondson. And as they come in towards the bus stop chicane, Dienster right now, I think we'll be looking at his rear view mirror and noticing he does have a pack of German machinery that is closing fast and it is bearing down a storm. As we look here to the Mercedes of what is Brotner going around the outside. Well, the Mercedes having a huge amount of overspeed here as they go side by side for the bank at 12, and it will very gradually inch ahead all the AMG machine as they power the way on the flat up towards turn number 1, and Dienster into the pits. He decides to go early here. I think he wants to get himself out of the battle and not cost himself any time. This is smart manoeuvring from the American as he makes his way down pit row. Meanwhile, we do hear that Joe Pinder's been involved in a nasty incident at the bus stop chicane, and we'll take a look back at that very short as Dienster misses his pit box by an inch or two and brings himself back. But meanwhile, we take a look back to what happened to Joe Pinder, and this was only moments ago into the bus stop chicane, slightly off camera, and as he made his way through turn number 11, car bounces and the rear lets go, and John Doble there very close to being collected by Pinder's wayward machine, but the Ignium Motorsport driver just stuck there and in the end trying to get the car back online. I think he was able to bring it back together, but it took him a while to do so. I think the car may have stalled and Pinder may have just been a bit shell-shocked by the incident after what was a very comfortable run in the battle for what was at that time P5 in the AM class. But as we return to the live pictures, we do see Dienster making his way out of the pit lane, and where's he going to re-emerge once everything is refactored? He's going to be down at P19, albeit Matt Strand getting close, and Strand on a recovery drive, given the incident earlier on, as we hear that Pinder's leaving the pit lane at the moment after a nasty knock to the barrier. But Brandon A and Richard Jones are both into the pits. So this is where we're starting to see this second pit stop of the day come on through, and it gives us a good time to take a quick sip of water if you don't mind us doing so. But as hey, it goes up on the jacks there, so it will be a change of tyres, at least 2, if not all 4. And I would imagine the same for Richard Jones, albeit you can't quite see him in the pits, he's a bit obscured. But meanwhile, what we can see clearly, and not obscured out on circuit, is Darren Sharples as he powers his way out the horseshoe hairpin up towards turn 6, and Sharples continuing on his way, keeping in mind battling for the potential pro win here, with the fact he didn't pick up the pole position in the pro class that went to Eric Rosev. He cannot tighten the score with Peter Cox anymore, but he can finish 1 point away from Peter Cox, which will be the best possible accolade he can get. As meanwhile, a little bit of a wobble there from Daniel Payes coming out of turn number 6. I don't know if you guys and girls saw that at home, but just coming out of turn number 6, a slight wobble in the rear of the car, power oversteer, and the old dudes in cars driver needs to be careful with making little wobbles like that, because if it starts off being a bit of oversteer coming out of a corner, well, it does start to play your mind as a driver, and Payes does not want that at the end of the day. He wants to keep this car safe, given the fact that there is an AM Championship, which is definitely going his way based on the current momentum. But as he powers his way up towards turn number 9 in the tow there, Joe Pinder is effectively a lap down now on the leader of the AM class, and given the fact he had to make that impromptu pit stop only moments ago and put his pit stops out of sequence, well, Tillin and Davison are coming into the pits and the lead of this race over on in the elite class. And I would imagine that Payes may be coming on through to the pits very shortly as well for what will be his second stop of the day, and we'll keep you posted if we do see full tyre changes. I think a lot of drivers are trying to go for more fuel in the pits this time around, and Payes comes on in as well, as we do see a bit of a side-by-side there between Sharples and Davies, and Darren Sharples holding nothing back here on pit entry and trying to go for a cheeky overtake before the limiter line. And we did see that, if some of you remember, a season or 2 ago between drivers in the pits. We saw overtakes under braking where some broke earlier than others, but everyone right now making to their pit stalls. Nobody picking up any stop and go penalties for speeding in the pit lane as far as we are aware. But Richard Jones here, who made his second stop only moments ago, emerging behind Brandon Hay, and the gap is 8 tenths between the two of them as they power the way on around. In fact, it's up to 1.3 tenths. Our time tower has been updated, and Brandon Hay getting the jump, albeit of a slightly longer pit stop. But the number 96 private team from Newbridge Esports still keeping his rivals honest, as meanwhile Darren Sharples leaves the pit lane. And well, where is Hay? That's the question. Well, there's Brandon Hay. You can see on the left of your picture very slightly where he's gone off camera. So Darren Sharples will come out of Brandon Hay, but it's not much of a margin here between the two of them. In fact, you see him make his way onto the brakes into turn 4, keeping on the left-hand side of the corner, and you will see there's Brandon Hay, and behind there's Richard Jones, who's got Daniel Payes coming out in front of him. So therefore, right now, Brandon Hay has gained even more time on the second stint of the race. Hayes going for the win here in the pro class, I would say, and he's pushing hard to do so, but surely at some point, the amount of fuel he's had to burn in that car in order to extract the pace will come back to haunt him for a brief moment. Meanwhile, Jones looks up the inside there of Paes, gets the move done early. Paes lets him go, knowing that Mark Johnson is still 7.5 seconds or so away. And for Daniel Paes, it's all about following the pro battle for the podium spots and stay in the tow and gain time as a result of it. Meanwhile, Mark Johnson has to do everything in what is essentially clear air, which is great in the infield section, but it's not great when you're on the straights or the banks. And as Pacer goes around away with Richard Jones, he almost lost the rear of the car going out of turn for some cold tyres, albeit relatively cold tyres or heavily worn tyres. We're not quite sure what he's changed on the car, albeit with only a 20.23 second stop. We'd imagine it's fuel and perhaps 1 or 2 tyres being changed. But they made their way through the left into right here on the bus stop chicane. Daniel Paes now firmly in control of what is the lead of the AM class and P6 overall. But he powers his way towards the end of another lap. Meanwhile, further down the order, we still see battles starting to brew up, including that Casper Brotner, who seems to be having to fight his way past every AM driver he encounters, including in front in there. What is the driver of not Paul Robson, that's Marvin Cruz, as they make the way up towards the start-finish line. And as they power the way on around here, both drivers doing everything in their power to try and extract the best possible out of the race. In fact, coming on through the bus stop chicane, they're a bit premature on our call towards the end of the lap. They're now heading towards the end of the lap, but Brotner continuing to charge on with the time he's lost thus far. As he makes his way up towards turn at number 1. Meanwhile, we look to Frank Klein, one of the TE6 Sport drivers in the AM class, who's looking to make it a podium here today, albeit he's got the company of Stephen Andre Livingston, and Livingston getting closer and closer as we are here in the Steiner Sannies into the pit lane, and we jump on board here with Livingston, the Racing Lab and 1 driver, as they break their way into turn 1. You can see Klein, they're using plenty of the runoff area. They are allowed to put 2 tyres beyond the white line, but any more than that, and they will pick up a slowdown or a track limit infringement. And I think it'll be most likely just a track limit infringement for the outside of turn number 1. But the point being, Klein really trying to use all the road width to his advantage. Livingston, by comparison, being very gradual with this Ferrari. And we do know the Ferrari becomes very difficult to drive when it's on a high tyre wear and on a hot circuit, much like with the Audi R8 LMS in fact. But the Audi is prone to burning out those rear tyres more so than any other car. But Livingston makes his way at turn number 4, having to battle against toes of oversteer there, or undercurrents of oversteer, as he gets down on the power coming out of the hairpin corners. And I think Livingston might be managing a tyre issue at the moment. He doesn't seem comfortable with the way the car's behaving, and with the dirty other Klein's car in front, that'll be upsetting the front aero balance, which will mean the car's much more skittish on that rear end when he gets the power down. And as they make the way up towards the bus stop chicane now, well, he is 8/10 away and very gradually close from that distance though, but Livingston just does not seem to feel comfortable in the car here, and this is really shocking given the fact we've seen Livingston be very comfortable in the Ferrari all season. But at Daytona, it's almost as if it's a different car. And as the Racing Lab and 1 driver pounds his way out of the chicane onwards towards turn number 12, I think for him right now, he may be just simply trying to stay within arm's reach of those who are battling for the podium of the AM class to try and get himself into contention. But meanwhile, here's the battle for P5 in the Pro class, and Casper Brotner's just made his way ahead of Paul Robson, who behind there, Robson going high, and I think Paul Robson may have had a mistake. Only moments ago, coming out of turn, what is their turn number 11 at the bus stop chicane. Given the fact that CHL Motorsport are going quite slowly by comparison, as he powers his way on through. Number 19 driver just carrying the momentum as best he can as he makes his way into another lap. But looking from them to your race leader over on the elite class, Martin Tillin, the TE6 corporate driver, still in control of this race as best he can be, and powering all the way through the bus stop chicane. And as he rolls his way towards the end of the lap, we are going to see whether we can get a word from the pit wall TE6 shortly from Craig Zenheimer. We are just in communication with him off camera here with regards to whether he's available. But whilst we do see one TE6 driver enjoying their race, others further down the field still trying to push on, and more drivers are pushing on as well outside of TE6. Here's the private hit of Marvin Cruz in the 90 car, and as he comes in towards the left-hand of turn number 1, tucked in behind Steiner Sandy at the moment, and these two have been battling for P9 in the AM class pretty much the entirety of the race since the opening lap incident, and both keeping each other honest and company here. A great little rivalry between them, and I think for Steiner Sandy in particular, this is not the way he wants the season to end, given the fact he's been battling for podiums and wins in the AM class all season. But I think for Marvin Cruz, whether they're battling for the win or P9, he'll enjoy this one. I think Sandy also going with him to an extent. And as they come in towards the breakers over turn number 6, with Sanny starting to leave Cruz behind as they roll off the corner, albeit Sanny won't be doing that if he goes overly deep beyond the apex of turn number 6, and has to bring the car back together. And a big small mistakes there for the BMW driver as he rolls his way into turn number 7, keeping it at bay from charging on after Thomas Barget, who's 6 seconds up the road. As he powers his way on around and up towards what is the bus stop chicane. Meanwhile, we do look from them to John Doble, and here we do see the Tinky Simple Kimi driver 1.8 seconds clear to Tinder Dienza, but he returned with the best part of it, 9 seconds down on Simon Andre Livingston. So John Doble between a rock and a hard place at the moment, and the company he had of Joe Pinder a bit further back after that nasty incident at the bus stop chicane a few laps prior. But Joe Pinder right now not able to travel with the number 77 driver anymore, and Doble just trying to charge on it. In terms of his relative lap times versus Livingston, he is gradually bringing down the gap. We can tell you that he is currently going 2 tenths a lap faster than Livingston, and therefore at this rate of knots, by the end of the stint, he may be with an attacking distance based on strategy, but not in terms of trying to make the move on circuit as he rolls his way in towards turn number 6. Looking back to Cruz as we jump on board with the Porsche driver, and still there with Sanny, albeit ducking to the inside under brakes. Now I think worried about the dirty air and the currents that can lead to some understeer over turn number 1. But Marvin Cruz being very protective of the car as he rolls through turns 2 and 3 and up towards 4. And let's just listen to that Porsche engine. Powers his way up through the gearbox here, which does look as though Cruz will come to win the corners compared to Steinar Sanny. But the problem with this is the fact he's just not able to make enough headway in order to get close enough in the toe to make a move down any of the straights or on the banks. As he comes out to turn number 6 and up towards 7, still there, progressing as much as he dares as he heads in towards the exit of the infield. And with that, 7 tenths of the gap between the two of them, as they power the way out. Well, better run off the corner this time, and Cruz able to get the car pointed rather quickly and attempt gains as they exit. You can see that Sanny's just able to open up the tabs. The 6 cylinders of the BMW able to match the output of the 6 cylinders of the Porsche, but the difference being that Sanny here gaining a couple of hundreds. They power the way down towards the bus stop chicane this time around. It's a very back and forth battle between these two, although I think it's Sanny who really right now is keeping himself in touch and distance of Cruz, as Cruz carries too much speed there through the chicane, and I think that may be a slowdown, albeit he's not going to take it immediately. I think he's brought the car back together, and Sanny having difficulty with the bus stop chicane, and Cruz almost getting it near wrong. As you see a car on the low line there, that's Matt Edmondson going very slowly, and Matt Edmondson down in P25 overall, a lap down P12 in the AM class, and we'll try and get a replay of what happened to Matt Edmondson very shortly. But as they head upwards towards turn number 1, Marvin Cruz here still with Sanny by 4 attempts, and Cruz keeping the pressure on as he heads onto the brakes once again, but ducks the inside into turn 1, and surely I think that's got to be Cruz just trying to avoid any dirty air from causing the car to want to understeer away from it under braking and onto that outside line. But as they make their way in towards turn number 4, meanwhile we look from them to a bit further up the order, and this is the battle between Matt Strand versus what is John Doble and Paul Robson. And Strand and Robson are battling for P6 in the Pro class. Doble's just interfering with this and enjoying the battle of P13 overall. And as they make their way up towards the bus stop chicane, Doble's got himself in amongst the pair of pros. He's in the middle sandwich now, and can he go from being a sandwich filler to being on top as they make their way out to turn number 11 on towards 12? Well, at the moment it does look as though Doble is gaining a bit more pace here as Casper Broughton is only 1.8 seconds up the road. You'll see him briefly in the distant camera shots as they make their way on round towards the start for this straight. But point withstanding here, that it does look as though this battle is closing up to Broughton for the battle for P5 in the Pro Class very shortly. Meanwhile, John Doble's going to look around the outside here versus Robson into turn 1. Late on the brakes here is John Doble. It's going to be a very late move, but he carries all the speed. The Porsche's got the rotation, which others have not, but they're a little bit of a wobble corner exit, just power oversteer as he gets the car back together. Doble almost making it work, but now Strand looks up the inside, goes as late as he possibly dares into the horseshoe, hairpin side by side or corner exit, but it will be a closing door for John Doble, and in the end the number 77 driver has to tuck in as he rides on the back now of Strand's Audi as they power the way up towards turn number 6, but Strand getting the move done. But we look back from the rear of Robson's CHR Motorsport machine, and the number 19 car under quite a bit of pressure as they head on towards turn number 7. Now, one thing that Robson does have to his advantage is that he does have two cars behind him which are not the strongest on the straights with regards to their top gear. The Audi, the weakest in top gear compared to its peers in 6th gear. And as they make the way out to turn number 7 on towards 8, we'll hear that Robson can keep this momentum forward. Strand will have a difficult time, but Strand is gaining little by little. 2 tenths is how it started, and as they head up towards the flat now, it will be 1.5 tenths, but you can see that Audi is having to gradually get there. It's struggling. He will be within a tenth. Strand, does he look for it? No, he backs off there and stays in behind as they come on through the chicane once again, rolling off the apex curves and onwards, and now Strand falls to 4 tenths back. He'll gain the toe once more, but it'll be so minuscule in terms of the gains compared to what Robson's able to put down in terms of the speed, and that's where the Audi comes unstuck now, so they make the way towards the end of what them is the 32nd lap of race here at Daytona. As they power the way onwards towards lap number 33. Meanwhile, we do have an opportunity to take a look back at a couple of incidents, starting what happened on lap number 29 to Matt Edmondson. Well, as he made his way there through turn number 7, the rear of the car starts to let go. Edmondson tries to catch it one way, but the car swings the other way, and I think for Edmondson, just hot tyres there and worn tyres catching out the privateer driver, and then only 2 laps later, in fact 3 laps later on lap 32, we've had an incident for Rob Armstrong, and this is what happened to the UKSimRacing Hunt Mercedes AMG driver as he made his way through 5 into 6 onto the brakes here. And I think they're just trying to carry a bit too much speed into the corner, or perhaps too aggressive on the downshifts, and the rear of the car kicking round, and in the end for Rob Armstrong, an easy mistake to make, and with that number 45 driver not really losing anything other than a bit of time and also a bit of tyre life. But as we return to your live pictures, we've had a further incident for John Doble, who was on the back of this battle between Robson and Matt Strand. We will try and take a look back at that when we have some replay footage available, but right now, Strand trying to catch up as much as he possibly can, and we're right on board here with the Audi driver, and he's much closer this time, and this is where he can look for the move. He'll be made to go high as Robson just holds on, or is Strand going to follow him and literally nose to tail? Well, it's going to be the latter. And the race nav AM driver here knows he's got to get it all done into turn number 1. He'll not be good enough to do it into the bus stop chicane, because then he'll just be burning fuel and daylight as they make the way onwards towards 1. But the dirty air there just holds Strand back so much. You can see that he just cannot turn the car through the chicane, and Robson, being in that clear air, is just able to negotiate the weakness of the BMW, which is its natural want to understeer, with the car being front engine rear wheel drive compared to the Audi's mid engine rear wheel drive drivetrain. But Strand closed up once more, 2 tenths now as they head onto the flat towards the pit entry. On towards the start finish line they go. Half an hour in this race still remaining, and as he makes his way high, Strand looks for it, but Robson covers him in the road. Strand ducks back to the inside, but Robson keeps the car pitched exactly where he needs to. On to braking there through turn of 1, and Robson goes a bit deep, but Strand not able to stay close to following him. And as they make their way through turn 3, I think patience is wearing thin here for the Racing Nav driver. Wiper goes on to try and clear some dirt off the windshield, and as they make their way through turn at number 4, well, Robson there just holds his line, holds the racing line with it, and Strand having to wait once again to look for the move on the end of this lap. As they build the way up to turn number 6, the rest of the field at the moment has spaced out to a degree, so I think we will start to see the field come back together on the final stop of the day. But this battle between Strand and Robson for P6 in the Pro Class, with P13 overall, keeping us entertained in the meantime. As the pair of drivers make the way through turn number 7 up towards 8. Strand right now, again very close, 2 tenths this time, much like on the previous lap, but where else can Strand go for it? I mean, could he go for the potential move into the bus stop chicane and then drag race up towards turn number 1? Well, the problem with that is he'll let Robson have the mother of all runs, and Strand would have to go lower and brake as late as he dared into 1. But you can see Strand is trying to set this up for a run into turn 1, but he's got to get used to that dirty, and again under brake, and the car goes deep this time, and he just cannot get it to stop, and the gap opens up to 7.5 tenths. Strand just does not feel comfortable. It's the bus stop chicane within 3 tenths of another car. The Audi just does not have the rotation it needs, and I think the air on that car has been so severely compromised, and Strand will have to do this on strategy. And we are expecting our drivers to make one more scheduled pit stop today, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is Strand coming into the pits to do exactly that. He's had enough being caught up in the train. He's going to make this happen in the pits, and now will Robson react by coming in at the end of the next lap and making the jump? It has to be a qualifying in lap for Paul Robson, and for Strand it's going to have to be the best possible lap of the day from him on his out lap. As they make the way around, I wonder when we'll see some other pit stops then from our drivers. But meanwhile, we have had an incident involving John Doe. We talked about that only moments ago, and here's the replay as to what happened to our AM driver from UKSimRacing Kimmy. coming through turn number 5 and the car letting go there. Well, goodness me, for John Doe making his way into the motorhome area. Thankfully, he can just go straight through that. It's not solidly rendered in, but Doe was able to navigate his way back onto the tarmac very gradually and driving backwards there, but I believe able to do so until he returned to the runoff area. For the T-Sport Kimi driver getting a lot of oversteer, lift-off oversteer most likely for turn number 5, and the Porsche is letting go, and that's the problem with the Porsche in general once it's got heavily worn tyres and low fuel, given the fact the fuel tank is in the front of the car, not the rear, unlike the other GT3 machines you see here today. A little bit of trivia for you, it's the only car I do believe that's still ongoing in GT3 class racing which has the fuel tank in the front, but when that fuel comes out of the car, the aero balance of the Porsche changes considerably over the course of a race, and therefore the rear of the car in particular, it really does become, from what is already very sensitive, the engine being far behind, it becomes ever more sensitive, and the front of the car becomes extremely light. And put 2 and 2 together, it means that with a Porsche, things such as lift-off oversteer become a huge concern through sweeping corners. In terms of the rear of the car, may just suddenly let go if you haven't got the right amount of throttle application. But as we look here to live pictures of Paul Robson making its way up towards turn number 1, will build the speed ever more so, and time continues to trickle down here. We've only seen one pit stop, and that is in the form of the pit stop from Matt Strand on the scheduled stops that we are expecting. But looking at from Robson back to Marvin Cruz. As Cruz makes his way through the bus stop chicane, he's still chasing down Steinar Sani. The gap between these two opened up considerably, but has closed back up again in short notice. In fact, I think Sani having a poor run coming through the chicane as they make the way towards the timing line. Will Sani duck into the pits? Will Cruz duck into the pits? Well, may let it go, given the fact they've only got 25 minutes left on the clock. Plus the final lap, so therefore not long left to make that third and final stop, and they will try to even out the pit stops. And we've seen the pit stop typically every 22 minutes, so it would put the final stop of the day at the 66 minutes in about 2 minutes time for most drivers, if not a little bit deeper, and we'll give the final stint will be 20 minutes or less effectively. I would imagine drivers will lighten the car up a bit more, but also some tyres may need to be changed. But Marvin Cruz here tucks in behind, and Steinar Sani can't find his way on through at the moment. Big question will be what's happening with Eric Rozev. Well, we can see the McLaren MP412C driver, currently P4 in the Pro Class, P9 overall, continuing to charge on. And in terms of his relative lap times, he is matching the times of Darren Sharples and Brandon Hay, who are the 2 leaders in the Pro Class. In fact, on that last lap, he was able to take out of them 4 tenths and 5 tenths respectively for Hay and Sharples. So therefore, Rozev is the fastest pro driver out there, but the only problem is he has given himself a major hill to climb unless he's going incredibly long and only making this a 2-stop race, whereas everybody else is looking to go for a 3-stop effectively. And that first pit stop, would be interested to hear what exactly happened in that first stop, where it was scheduled, or whether there's another part to the story, a penalty potentially. But right now, the Unicorn machine, and we say it's a Unicorn McLaren because we rarely do see it, being one of the cars that predates the McLaren 650S, let alone the 720S and 720 Evo, which do race in modern formula today. But right now, the bi-turbo V8 being made to resound around Daytona, and Rosev doing everything he can to try and bring on home what is a top 3 in the Pro Class, if not the win. But as he powers his way out to turn at number 7, meanwhile, we do look from him to Steinar Sani, who still does have a Cruz at Strand behind for company. And you can see this long queue of cars now started to form up behind the Racing Lab and 1 BMW M4 as the Norwegian driver here continues to build the speed. He's in the pit lane in the AM class. He'll drop down the order to an extent. Meanwhile, as we see Cruz go slightly defensive there, Strand taking a little bit of a look. Sani going a bit deep on the outside. Cruz again, just not happy with that outside line. Is Cruz, he wants that inside line under braking, and it gives him a good defensive line by default. But the problem is he's losing speed out the corner exit, and as they make the way in towards the horseshoe hairpin. Well, Sani, I don't think he's got much tyre life left in the car. Given that he's really struggling to get the car to rotate and get the power down. Cruz having to wait there, and everybody queuing up now in a long line of cars. You've also got Matt Edmondson, who's a lap down tucked in behind this, and as they make the way up towards turn number 6, on the inside, in fact, that's Mark Davidson, who is your 2nd place overall driver. And Sani off the road there, goes overly deep. Well, he catches it on the grass, but the tyre life in the end gives up on Sani, and it does look like the Racing Lab and 1 driver's going to lose not just 1 or 2, he's going to lose a whole host of places. And Maddox comes on through, Connie, who's a lap down, comes on through but doesn't gain a place, and Steinar Sani drops to P10 in the AM class, and what is their P22 overall. Towards a very resilient drive, but for the BMW M4 driver, it's gone the wrong way. And now for Marvin Cruz, well, his target will be towards Boljuk, who's 6.5 seconds up the road. Well, He's got the company of Matt Strand behind, and as they power the one down, but I think here Cruz may try to work this out with Strand, so let Strand just simply take the place off him, as we hear that Mark Johnson has just left the pit lane and has taken what is an extended pit stop, and I believe that will be, in fact, not an extended pit stop, only a 19-second pit stop. So I think just taking fuel, potentially a couple of tyres being changed on the car, and therefore for Johnson, it's all about now running to the end. And will we see Daniel Payes react to that shortly, given the fact before the pit stop, Payes did have at least a 5-second advantage? We'll have to see. But meanwhile, Cruz versus Strand as they head across the timing line. Side by side they go, and he just lets it go, with Strand making his way on through. Then Marvin Cruz playing the smart and sensible approach. Joe Pinder's in the pit lane, so is Richard Jones. We've got more pit stops playing out now. Brandon Hay comes into the pits as well. This will be for his final time today. And as he makes his way down pit row, will the number 96 driver here get himself comfortably set for his final pit stop? Pinder up on the jacks, and I would imagine that Brandon Hay will be up on the jacks as well. He's just made it to his pit box, albeit almost overshooting it, and we'll take the fuel there to go to the end. As we look from him to Stein Sani after that off, carrying on, has not made another pit stop, so he's deciding to go on. Matt Maddox in front of him, and as we ride on board here with the BMW M4 driver from the dash, we can see the number 78 Racing Lab AM1 driver still fighting on hard, and Maddox here digging in, and both of these drivers only on 2 stops so far. We expect there might be one more. Powering their way out of the corner and up towards turn number 7. Well, any thought of Eric Rosev only doing the 2-stop here today has been quashed in the fact that Eric Rosev is in the pit lane now, and he's dropped down to P4, so he's making one more quick stop. It's a very short stop for Eric Rosev, with just taking fuel in the car. So I think the McLaren driver must have had a penalty that he had to serve on that opening pit stop, perhaps a speeding penalty, and therefore it was a stop and hold penalty that he served. But for the McLaren driver, it's definitely been a disastrous end to proceed. I think Darren Sharples right now maybe thinking to himself, if only I could have taken that pole position in qualifying the pro class, but it wasn't to be. But Sharples firmly in control for that pro win at the moment, albeit we are waiting to see where Sharples will make his last pit stop, and with that where it will put him versus Hay and Casper Brotner. And Sani here falling back from Maddox. I think Stein Sani really now starting to struggle towards the end of this stint. We've got another driver into the pit lane there, and I do believe that is going to be Ryan Davies who comes on in from 3rd place overall, and indeed it is, as the TC Sport Kimmy driver heads to his box, rolling along the pit row now and heading up towards the stop, and he puts himself in the pit box there, absolutely dead centre, and we could not ask for a better pit stop. But as he gets himself set and ready to go once again. Meanwhile, race leader Martin Tillin yet to make his final pit stop as Daniel Payes is in as I look at my quarantine booth window. So all our drivers right now getting those stops in as soon as possible. Payes missed his pit box slightly, in fact, but I don't think that's going to perturb him too much. He has got a 36-second gap to Mark Johnson. We are keeping our eyes on it though, with Wes Klein and also Livingston yet to pit. Frank Klein is into the pits now. I would imagine Simon Andre Livingston's into the pit lane. Yes, he is. So therefore, we do look back to Payes. He makes it out the pit lane, and well, coming on down here on the pit limiter. Meanwhile, where is Mark Johnson? That's the big question. Well, Payes comes on through. Johnson makes his way across the start-finish line now, but Payes continues to build speed on pit exit. He's got to go through the hairpin first, and as he does, well, Johnson not on camera. Payes just missed the wall there by an inch, but now Payes builds up the speed. As he does, it's close, but you can't see Johnson on camera at the moment. But look at the bottom of your screen, and there is Mark Johnson, and Johnson has jumped up that gap and has been slashed all the way down to 1.5 seconds, if that, and Johnson has put in an absolutely monstrous pair of laps. His in lap and his out lap have been some of the strongest we've seen all day, but right now for Daniel Payes, he's exactly where he needs to be, leading the AM class with 1.4 second gap. And keep in mind, Daniel Payes does not need to win this race in order to take the AM championship. All he needs to do is finish 1 or 2 places behind Johnson, and it's all done. It will be Daniel Payes who becomes your AM champion. But right now, I don't think he's going to be thinking about that. I think he'll be just running the race as best he can. And Johnson will be with bated breath, thinking about how he can push the UKSimRacing machine a bit closer to close up on the old Duty Cars driver. With the gap being 1.5 seconds, it does mean that Johnson's got a lot of work to do if he wants to close up. He needs to be within a second to really benefit from the draft. And as they power their way down towards the bus stop chicane, onto the brakes they go once again, and will time continue to trickle down. 18 minutes left on the clock here, plus the final lap, and Mark Johnson having to chase against the wind right now and push to his utmost if he wants to try and take the AM Championship crown. But as we say, even so, with Daniel Page having effectively was a 5-point advantage going into tonight, and with drop scores accounted for, presuming that it would be Johnson who takes win and Page finishing second, we can advise that it would be Daniel Page who gained more compared to Mark Johnson, and therefore Page would still be your champion. But powering on around and up towards turn number 1 they go once again. Well, Johnson won't be thinking about that right now. All he'll be thinking about is taking the win in the class and then seeing if Page drops it at the very end. But knowing the consistency of these two drivers, the one thing they do not do is make mistakes. But as they head in towards turn number 4 through the horseshoe hairpin, and they're both in a world of their own, we should point out, with the fact that Frank Klein, P3 in the AM class, has served his third pit stop as well. He is currently a whole minute and 5 seconds over the top two. So Page and Johnson absolutely storming away lap after lap here today, and that really has been their story of the season in terms of their performances. But as we do see Klein coming from through turns 2 and 3, at the same time respect must be given where it's due to Frank Klein in the fact that TE Supersport Tyre driver, after that win, starts off the second half of the season at Road America. We've seen a completely revamped driver in the form of Frank Klein in the 33, and the BMW M4 driver continues to push on the podium to left, right and centre, albeit Simon Andre Livingston just behind him by a gap which is currently 2.5 seconds. And I think Livingston is the faster driver of the two at this stage in the race. He does seem to have a little bit more speed in the car, but then again, once he gets into that dirty air, he'll have the toe. But will Klein feel comfortable just keeping the Ferrari at bay, and the Evo GT3 machine right now doing everything in its power to stay clear of falling off the circuits. It almost does. They're coming out of turn number 7 and also very close to the exit wall as he powers his way through the turn number 8 bank. Charging down towards turn number 9, once again heading up towards the Button chicane. Our drivers continue to build that momentum here, and now it's all about have they got enough fuel to get to the end. So they need to do any further fuel saving. Not that we'd wish it on any of our drivers, of course, but in these longer races, particularly if the race goes 1 lap extra compared to what drivers are planned for, then it can lead to some emergency scenarios. But meanwhile, speaking of the scenario which we love to see, it's the battle for P9 in the AM class between this man Matt Maddox, who's chasing, and the one who's running right now is Steinar Sunny for Racing Lab AM1. And well, as the Norwegian here heads onto the brakes to turn number 6, the corner that calls him out before the end of what is his 3rd stint, now in his 4th and final stint of racing today. And as he heads up towards turn number 7, well, again, it's the back and forth between the two German machines in the fact the car from the Bayerische Motorwerke versus the Porsche. Well, it's for Sani to try and work it out on the straight and also make sure that the cornering capabilities of the BMW do not hold him at bay, with the brakes of the BMW also some of the weaker ones in the field. Meanwhile, the brakes and cornering capabilities of the Porsche Matt Maddox absolutely unrivaled. The only problem is it does not have the speed on the straights to compensate. But in the toe here, he can mitigate that weakness to an extent. But catching is one thing, passing is another. And as they make their way into the chicane, you can see behind us Darren Sharp, who's your pro leader, who follows them on through as they power their way out. And Maddox gets a much better run off the chicane. Now he's got to time this right here. He's going to look up high early. This is to bleed off a bit of speed from the car. Now will Maddox just tuck back down and then get the overspeed once again? I think he will. Gap is only a 10th, and therefore what Maddox can do now is use the overspeed on the flat here to try and go high and around the outside. But Sani does have the option to run the car a bit deeper. But again, could this be applied by Maddox to try and get a cutback run into 1 and sweep the car into the inside? Well, Sani's going to defend here. Maddox on the outside, too wide to go into the corner. Maddox there on the outside, but falls behind the rear quarter panel of Sani, and therefore had to back out of the move as they come through 2 and 3. And Sharples closes up to the back of this, and well, the pro leader will want Maddox to move out of the way. They want the same from Sani. Maddox responds immediately to the blue flag, and now it will be for Sani to do the exact same very shortly. And Sharples, well, in terms of the pressure, he's got an 8-second gap to Brandon Hay behind, as Brandon Hay just making his way. It's not an 8-second gap, we should correct ourselves there. It's a 2.6-second gap, but meanwhile from them to Daniel Page, and will drama. And I said don't count it over until it's over, and Daniel Page has had an instant at turn number 4. The car's gone round for the old duty cars driver, and Mark Johnson is now your AM leader going into the final stage of this race. And well, for the old duty cars driver, that the Mercedes does not look as though it's hit anything in terms of a wall. That's going to knock his confidence, there's no doubt about that. The good thing that does stay in the favour of Daniel Pace is the fact he does have a 28-second advantage to Frank Klein. It's in fact, our time tower has been updated from what was that minute gap there. I think that was a bit of an erroneous moment for our timing tower, and the gap between the top two and Klein and the rest of the field is at 28 seconds, but Daniel Pace has gone on the round at turn number 4, and let's take a look back at exactly what happened. Well, this was the run through turn number 3 into the horseshoe hairpin, onto the brakes of Pace, managing the pace. Coming on through the right hand, the rear of the car starts to let go. He tries to stop it, and it just snaps round, and in the end goes for a pirouette and gets the car out of the way very quickly. In fact, nice way of getting the car returned there, Daniel Pace, albeit Johnson will take that place, but Johnson will also know it's not enough, and Pace right now still on course to take the AM Championship. But meanwhile from them, here's Matt Maddox on the inside versus Sani on the live pitch as he goes for it this time, and on the inside, diving there and late as possible, and Matt Maddox making the break for that Porsche count, as meanwhile Brandon Hay now tries to negotiate the back of Sani's car, and Brandon Hay not too pleased with the fact he feels like he's being crowded here, as you can see Sani backs off on the inside, but that's not, oh, and there's contact there, and for Brandon Hay, the dreamer chasing down his first win of the season has now been turned around right in front of him, as the number 96 driver in contact with Sani, and Wilfer Stein on Sani. I think there was no malice meant, but trying to break the car, but then the nose overextended on the apex of a Brandon Hay. Well, I can imagine right now there might be a few words underneath the cockpit of the Newbridge Esports privateer, but that has given Darren Sharples a 7-second gap to play with, and any of the damage picked up on Hayes' car will hurt him on the straight, and that's where he's been gaining a lot of the lap time. In fact, per lap, it has been about 3 to 4 tenths on average, not including laps where they've had to negotiate drives who are a lap down, but definitely for Brandon Hay, this is not the way he's wanted it to go today, as now he's got to double up his efforts. Meanwhile, we do have a mistake there for Casper Broughton, as we see Paul Robson almost losing it, going around the outside of the stricken Mercedes, and as the old duty car's driver brings it back up to speed, we've had a further incident for Daniel Pace, and Pace, I believe, has had a spin. We're trying to understand where he is on the circuit. I think at turn number 7 for Daniel Pace, this is becoming a nightmare here. He is losing time, and right now Frank Klein is 17 seconds away and closing very gradually, but as he powers his way through turn number 8 and up towards 9 and 10, went towards the bus stop chicane he goes, and well, don't want to wish this on anybody, of course, ladies and gentlemen, but the thing is for Daniel Pace right now, if he can't calm things down, this championship could be slipping out of his hands when he's got 2 hands firmly on it. And as he makes his way on through it now towards turn number 12 here, we won't want to make any more mistakes right now. All he'll want to do is keep the car on the straight and narrow. He can afford to turn the pace completely off at this point and not push hard. He can afford to lose 2 seconds a lap versus Frank Klein, and he will still become your AM champion. That's all he's got to do as he makes his way up towards turn number 1 once again. But have the tyres just gone on the Mercedes? Has the car just given up? And as he makes his way for the opening corner, I don't think we can see anything from the body language of the machine right now, but for Daniel Pace, definitely it does seem to be struggling as we take a look back at what happened at turn 7 on the previous lap. Was he made his way out to turn number 6 into the braking zone? Here he goes, and I think it may be an aggressive set of downshifts. In fact, the rear of the car let go as he turned into the apex, and for Pace, I think it may be tied arms and legs and tyres at the rear not cooperating, and those right side tyres who have taken an absolute punishment compared to left side tyres as he brings himself back up to speed. And as he does, or meanwhile, look into the live pictures here, and we jump from here to Matt Strand versus Paul Robson. In this battle for P4 in the Pro Class, and what is P11 overall, it's the best of the rest rides. We're definitely taking another turn with Robson getting ahead of Strand into turn number 1. But now we can see that Strand trying to look around the outside, but Robson comes him off in the middle of the road. It's wide enough for 2 there, unless your opponent defends in the middle of the road. And Strand experiencing the full force of that as he breaks his way into the right hand of turn number 6. We ride on board with the Audi R8 LMS machine from Racing Lab AM as he gets the better exit off the corner. 9 minutes still left on the clock. And as he breaks his way into turn number 7 through the left-hander they go, we can see that Robson going overly deep and losing the rear of the car as the car bounces away. And with that, Paul Robson to get the car stopped in time. I think Matt Strand now will be free in this battle, albeit he's got Casper Broughton only 1.6 seconds back, and Casper Broughton gains P5 in the Pro Class. And Broughton will be smiling at this for the simple reason all that hard fortitude is now paying dividends as he brings himself down the back straight. He makes battles towards the bus stop chicane. Meanwhile, further battles the field. Thomas Barjot trying to chase down with Matt Maddox as they make the way through the kick of 5 and up towards 6. Steinar Sani has fallen behind these guys. They come through the right-hander, and I believe that Sani with a car that's limping around right now after the contact with Brandon Hay. Only 3 laps to go, but Thomas Barger pushed off the P8 versus Maddox. So there's still plenty of battling here, albeit it's all coming down to the final couple of laps of Daytona today in terms of all these battles coming to their full fruition. But tyres do seem to be going off for many drivers. As Alan Lever says there, asked the question, are tyres going off? And I suspect you're right there, Alan, in the fact that so many drivers now starting to make mistakes, which we didn't see or saw sparingly in the opening stages. But I think most drivers have opted to try and do this race on tyres which have seen a huge amount of wear, in fact excessive to the point there's going to be very little rubber left. And as Barger, they're really struggling to get the car rotated through, or falling away from Maddox. I think Maddox will feel he's safe from the tenacity of the Cookie Monster Ferrari as he makes his way through the back of the turn 12 and on towards the next lap. But from then we look to your race leader here of Martin Tillin, fastest driver on circuit currently and holder of what is the fastest lap, in fact not the fastest lap of this race. We should correct ourselves there. Tillin's fastest lap in the elite class is a 44.17, but the fastest lap accolade, in fact, we do believe, we're trying to get an understanding of who's got the fastest lap, and I believe it's John Doble with a 45.09, but we haven't got that data available to us right now. But definitely it's Robert Amdros who holds the fastest lap here today. And as our drivers come charging on through, we'll still plenty of time to see if anything else can change here. But right now for Tillin with an advantage with 8.2 seconds over Mark Davidson. He doesn't need to do anything spectacular in order to bring home the win. And that will see him still second place runner-up in the Elite Championship, as Davison makes his way out to the final corner and onwards towards the bus stop chicane. The UKSimRacing Hunt driver here, he's run a good race, and Ryan Davis is only 3 seconds behind him. And with the UKSimRacing Hunt, it's the championship points which are the most critical as he powers his way down towards the chicane. And well, with Davison there, with that gap of 3 seconds to Davis, you would imagine that Ryan Davis will be throwing everything he can at this. And he is lapping 2/10 of a second faster a lap, but it's not going to be enough. And in fact, to put that gap in perspective, as we're hearing that Steinar Sani's been involved in an instant, and that is, I do believe, up at what is the exit at turn number 7. So many drivers get it wrong at turn number 7 right now. We'll bring you up to the time delta between Davies versus what is Davison, and that'll be at the bottom of your screen. And well, as we do take a look at the time delta, here it is, and you can see how it has come down over the last 5 laps. And in fact, it's come down quite aggressively, down to 3.3 seconds compared to what was the originally at 4.3 seconds with some oscillation. But Davies definitely pushing on as much as he possibly can with the time still left in this race. As he heads on out, we do bring the battle box back up on your screen here. It will be Davies trying to negotiate his way past Tinder Dienzer. Dienzer pulls the outside there, respects the blue flags immediately, and makes it as clear as day that he's letting the place go. But looking from them to Oyvind Breivik, the Racing Lab AM driver tucks in behind Marvin Cruz in the battle for P17 overall, as these two drivers make their way out the horseshoe hairpin and up towards turn number 6. And while Oyvind Breivik had a very quiet race compared to some of his peers from Racing Lab AM and Racing Lab AM, we haven't seen too much of him, and I think he has been a bit of a no man's land in P8 in the Pro class since the start really. And as he rolls his way out to turn number 6, it'll be still a consistent performance from him as he heads up towards turn number 7. Powering his way on through, and meanwhile looking from one Racing Lab AM machine that's had a quiet race to one that's had a race against the elements. Well, here is Eric Rosev, P3 in the Pro class, having got ahead of Matt Strand and Casper Brotner. And as Matt Strand enters the pit lane from P4 in the Pro class, and that I believe is for fuel for Matt Strand. He's not got enough fuel to get to the end. It's a late drama already for one driver, and I do believe we may see perhaps some more from other drivers who may be thinking about the fuel right now. Well, Strand having a very quick pit, so that's going to put Casper Brotner into P4 and Paul Robeson into P5, no doubts about that. Where Rosev now 7 seconds off of Brandon Hay, and still trying to chase down the Newbridge Esports privateer, but to do so he's going to pull some magical laps out the bag here, and I don't think he's got long enough to do it, as Brendan Hay meanwhile still trying to chase down Darren Sharples and gaining on average 8/10 to a whole second a lap from Sharples. But Sharples can afford to just cruise this race to the end, giving his advantage to take the final Pro win of the season. And with 3.5 minutes left and our race leaders going on towards the 49th lap, we will have one more lap after this one. We will see a grand total of 50 laps delivered here today at the Daytona International Speedway. And well, as Brandon Hay crosses the timeline, we look to Darren Sharples cloud coming over the circuit to an extent, and Sharples here feeling in control, negotiating the traffic as best as possible as we see James Connolly and Matt Maddox behind, and James Connolly after that nasty shunt on the open lap, really just not able to recover in this race, but still holding off to finish what will be for him hopefully a P12 in class and P24 overall, and his next target is Joe Pinder, but Pinder is 53 seconds up the road. I think for Connolly it's all about just staying in it to win it, and you never know what can happen come the very end of the race. But rolling his way off of the turn 6 hairpin apex and up towards turn number 7, where he follows Maddox around him. I think this will be a little bit of an exercise as well in terms of race pace. We do look from them back up to Matt Strand, and Strand re-emerging from the pit lane just ahead of Rob Armstrong, and Armstrong only 7 tenths away, so the race lap and driver here losing out considerably and then some. In fact, he is now 13 seconds off the, well, in fact 17 seconds if we do our mathematics correctly, of the Paul Robson in P5, and Strand with Armstrong closing, and Armstrong is absolutely storming up behind the Audi driver here. Well, I think the UKSimRacing Hunt driver can see there's a P6 available, and UKSimRacing Hunt, of course, in the battle for the championship, the team's championship, and looking to get points. So right now, for Armstrong, it's all about getting some extra points, and they make their way through. Around the outside he goes, late on the brakes there, but Strand will defend on the inside, and while Armstrong made to go all wide there, coming out to the opening corner, has to take all four wheels beyond the white line. That will be a track limit infringement as he makes his way through the kinks of 2 and 3 and in towards turn number 4. Well, Armstrong now getting himself set once again as he pounds out the corner and up towards turn number 6. They will look for the move on the run down the back straight. Now we can advise you, ladies and gents, but the race leaders are on to lap number 50, and Martin Till in fact is going up towards turn number 7 at the moment, so we will likely get a 51st lap in rather than have this be a 50 lap race. So we do correct that, and I wonder whether everybody expects there will be a 51st lap here today, given the fact it's going to be quite marginal in the end. It will be about 10 seconds to that 51st lap, and could that throw a spanner in the works for any other drivers out on the field? We have seen a couple of drivers, we've seen Matt Strand having to dive to the pits to take on some last minute emergency fuel, but as Armstrong comes on through at the bank in the turn number 8, now closing again to Strand, a gap of 6.5 seconds, 6.5 tenths at the moment. Edmondson just watching on behind, but meanwhile we do look from them to Martin Till, your race leader. He's got 50 seconds before the checker flag comes out, and the TC Corporate driver will get another lap in. He is going to come on through here. It's a 30-second run to the start-finish line from the exit of the bus stop chicane or thereabouts. He should just about squeeze a lap in here, so we will go white flag for one more lap here at Daytona. There will be a 51st and final lap, and it's Till who roars his way onto it, the Porsche with full belt on towards turn number 1. But from him to Oyvind Brevik, meanwhile Brevik looking around the outside of Dienza, and as they make the way up towards what is turn number 1 as well, side by in fact down the back straight here. This is on the start-finish straight. We correct ourselves a second time, and the race lap and driver picking up P16 there off of Dienza, who's got Marvin Cruz coming for Dienza. I think low on fuel, in fact limping across the timeline there, so Dienza right now is not going to have fuel. Rob Armstrong's in the pit lane taking an emergency pit stop for fuel. It's pandemonium for some teams right now. I think some of the strategy calls have not gone right for some drivers, and with that, could we see any last-minute rolls to line from anybody? Well, we'll have to wait and see. And we have got a scouts out on circuit trying to give us information. But meanwhile, as we do look from what is here, Dienza, back to your leader in the pro class of Darren Sharples. Well, Sharples lead to Brandon Hay, now only 5 seconds, but yeah, I think he's got control of this, and Sharples will not be taking anything for granted as the white flag's out up the inside of Dienza then to turn number 6. Dienza turns in, but gives all the space. I think Dienza needs a bit of momentum as Maddox here. We're looking to try and pick his way through. And around the outside Maddox goes. Dienza's just not got any fuel left in that Ferrari, and Maddox will take the place for P7 and try to run away with it as much as he can, and Dienza will try and latch onto the toe, but meanwhile looking from them to one driver from TU Sport will not be having any drama as he makes his way to the line. Well, Martin Tilling putting it right up there on what was pole position overall and in the elite class. 9 to take P2 in the elite championship. He needed to take the win today, and as he makes his way down the final stretch, he's going to do it, ladies and gentlemen. For as he comes to line, Martin Tilling takes the win here at Daytona elite and overall, and we're at second place in the elite class championship ahead of Mark Davidson, who will come on through to take P2 in the elite class. Well, a great end to the UKSimRacing Hunt Drivers Championship campaign. Ryan Davis in the rear of the picture, P3 there to round off the elite and overall podium, and Darren Sharples pulls, whilst he may not have done enough to tie up the championship come the end of the season. He makes his way on through, and he will take another win in the Pro class here and finish your runner-up in the Pro Championship behind Peter Cox. Brandon Hay will come through to P2 in the Pro class ahead of Eric Rosev, who will shortly come to line, finishing the Pro podium after that early pit stop, really scuppered his chances of a win. But still, Mark Johnson comes on through the final stretch to take the win in the AM class. But it's not enough, ladies and gentlemen, for Daniel Payes. The impossible dream has become a very realistic reality. He finishes second in the AM class, and with it, the Old Dudes in Cars driver is your AM champion for Season 10 of the GT3 League. And I don't think he's going to quite believe it right now as he brings the car to a pause. Frank Klein will come on through to finish the AM podium there, P3 in class, P9 overall. And then very shortly, it will be P10 overall, and just off of the AM podium positions, and a battle to the line between Simon Andre Livingston and what is there, Casper Brotner. I think Brotner's going to get the place just in time. We'll have to wait and see. Brotner is ahead, so it will be Casper Brotner P10, P4 in the Pro class, and Simon Andre Livingston best the rest, P11 overall, P4 in the AM class. Paul Robson there taking his season best performance of the season in class, P5 in the Pro class. He comes to the timing line. As he comes on through, the CHR Motorsport driver will be absolutely pleased with that. And then it will be John Doble who finishes the race as what will be our final lead lap finisher. P5 in the AM class, P13 overall. And Matt Strand has already finished his race at P14 with the rest of the field behind. But as we do see some donuts there going up from our drivers, well, we've already had a number of them make their way into the pit lane. But everybody's celebrating the end of the season. You can completely understand why. And Paul Robson now, I think, really pleased with the fact that the CHR Motorsport team picking up their best result of the season here today at Daytona. Commiserations for what was Joe with James Rankin. It didn't quite work out for him, but he's still joining in on some of the celebrations. And as they make their way on through, and those tyres are going to be ripped to pieces. In fact, the cars, I think, are going to need new engines after this, albeit the mechanics won't be too pleased about it, but the drivers won't care when it is the end of the season. And we love to see some donuts there, as we do see Simon Andre Livingston and Wesley Steiner Sunny parking up together. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And here they are, starting off with the overall results. And after 90 minutes of racing here at Daytona International Speedway in the state of Florida in the US of A, for round 8 of 8 in the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 10, Martin Tilling taking the overall win in the end for TT Simsport Corpa by 10 seconds ahead of UKSimRacing Hunt's Mark Davison, with Ryan Davies P3 there for TT Simsport Kimmy. An all-elite overall podium and the elite podium there as well. And then Darren Sharples P4 there, your pro winner, and not quite able to take the perfect score today, but with the performance he's put in, deserved runner-up in the Pro class behind Peter Cox. Brandon Hay at P2 then in the Pro class, and I think he'll be asking himself a what-if question. If he hadn't been involved in that contact with Steinar Sani towards the end of the race, could he have potentially been on course for the win in the Pro class today? We'll never know, but still, he'll be pleased with season best performance for P2, and Eric Roseff recovering to P3 in the Pro class and P6 overall after the Racing Lab and Privateer having that difficult pit stop at the start, which saw him drop all the way down the order. Mark Johnson, your AM winner today, P7 overall for UKSimRacing Moss, and I do believe with that performance it will mean that UKSimRacing Moss have taken the team's championship, albeit we'll need confirmation of that, so we can't confirm that at the moment. But what we can definitely say is that whilst Johnson has taken the win here today, for Daniel Payes taking P8 and second place in the AM class, the Old Dudes in Cars driver has done enough to make a fleeted dream a reality of becoming AM champion. Then P9 Frank Klein, who rounds off the AM podium there for Tiki Simsport Tower, ahead of Old Dudes in Cars is Casper Brotner, who round off the top 10 overall, and then best the rest P11 Simon Andre Livingston for Racing Lab and 1. Now we'll move on to will be at the bottom half of the field, ladies and gentlemen, as we have covered all the podium finishers in the overall category, and in particular focusing on the last lead lap finisher of John Doble, P13 there for TT Simsport Kimmy, and then finishing a lap down, Oyvind Breivik was the first of many there, also Marvin Cruz, Matt Maddox, Rob Armstrong, Satinder Dinsa, Thomas Barjuk, Steinar Sani, James Rankin, Joe Pinder, 2 laps down Matt Strand and James Conley, 3 laps down Matt Edmondson, and then we had the retirements of Richard Jones at P26 there, but as he did finish over half the race distance, he will be classified as a finisher in P26, and the same for Darren Norquette, P27 there, albeit because he finished less than half the race distance. Only 12 laps completed. Dale Norket for Racing Forces will be classified as they did not finish by comparison. But coming from the overall classifications now to the individual class classifications. In the elite class, we only had 4 drivers arrive today in what was a relatively quiet class, but still Martin Tillin doing it enough to take the winning class, and for the TT SimSport Corporate driver enough to finish run-up in the elite championship, ahead of Mark Davison for UKSimRacing Hunt having his best performance of the season, and Ryan Davies completing the top 3 there for TT SimSport Kimi. Dale Norket, the sole retiree for Racing Forces there, 38 laps from the M. Coming to the pro class, the confirmation then that Dan Sharple's taking the win at the privateer, 5.5 seconds clear of Brandon Hay, and Eric Rosev completing the pro podium there, and Will Rosev doing very well to recover what was essentially a 42-second deficit to finish 9 seconds off the winner. That goes to show that Rosev's pace today was absolutely infallible, I should say, getting the right word there. Indeed, it's been a long day at Daytona, you'll have to forgive me, but Rosev there absolutely flying, and unfortunate not able to take the win in the final race of the season. When Casper Rottner P4 for Old Dudes in Cars, and then Paul Robson, the last pro finisher on the lead lap. Ivan Brevitt, P6 there, a lap down from Racing Lab Am. The same to Rob Armstrong for UKSimRacing Hunt, but that emergency pit stop costing him dear. And then James Rankin at P8 for CHR Motorsport. And then finishing 2 laps down, Matt Strand for Racing Lab Am, with Richard Jones completing the standings there, retiring 14 laps in the end, but we're classified as a finisher in P10. And lastly, coming on to the Am class, Mark Johnson taking the winning class for UKSimRacing Moss, picking up the win after what were some late mistakes and errors for Daniel Pays, but the 6.9 seconds belies the fact that despite his errors, Daniel Pays doing enough to hold on to P2 at the end, wasn't quite able to end the championship on a win, but still that P2 enough to crown him AM champion for the season for Old Dudes and Cars. Frank Klein, a further, what was there, 16 seconds behind in P3, an absolutely stellar performance for the TT SimSport tire to wrap off a great second half of the season, and then Simon Andre Livingston P4 there for Racing Lab Am, one a further 17 seconds behind, and a difficult end to the race from Racing Lab Am, but Livingston fighting on hard. John Doe P5 there for TT SimSport Kimi, 1 minute of the race winner, with Marvin Cruz a lap down P6, ahead of Matt Maddox, Satinder Dinsa, Thomas Barshett, Steinar Sani, and then Joe Pinder best the rest in P11, a lap down, with James Connolly P12 and 2 laps down come the end, and Matt Edmondson at 3 laps down, but all of our AM participants finishing the race under their own steam. But those are the finishing positions, ladies and gentlemen, but we're not quite finished yet, as whilst the racing may have finished, well, firstly, we would like to once again say a big thank you to UKSimRacing as a whole, the administration team, for running this season as championship. Indeed, a celebration of the 10th anniversary in terms of seasons of the UKSimRacing GT3 League, and you can see that little logo on the centre right of your screen there, put together by Brandon Hay, and that's been on all screen all the way through the round 7 and round 8 broadcast, because this season has meant so much to many drivers. Indeed, this league means so much to many in the UKSimRacing community and onwards. But also, we now need to step away for about 10 to 15 minutes for our post-round interviews to get set. Indeed, we've seen plenty of racing action today, but what do our drivers have to say about it? We'll be back soon to find out. Don't go anywhere, you won't miss those interviews. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews, our final interviews of the season. And we apologise for the slight delay. We had to give a bit of time for our drivers to cool down after what was the final race of the season. You can imagine it was absolutely fever pitch down in the paddock, with all our drivers wanting to congratulate one another and find out the final finishing positions in the standings. But we're going to be interviewing very shortly the three drivers as follows. We'll start off with Daniel Page, your AM champion for Old Dudes in Cars, by only 2 points in the end in the AM class over Mark Johnson, before then hearing from Frank Klein for TE Simsport Tour, the American flying high in his final round of the season, and then Brandon Hay in the Pro class, and that battle for the win in class versus Darren Sharples that came down to fine margins. But as I'm immediately joined in the interview room by Daniel Page himself. Daniel, congratulations to you. And firstly, what a drive today, albeit there were some moments at the end, but more importantly, the win in the AM Championship. When we spoke to you at the Nürburgring after that absolutely brilliant drive to victory in Germany, you said that it was a one-off and that there was no real opportunity for you to be taking the championship versus Mark Johnson. But now, 4 weeks later, you've done it. You stand atop of the mountain. You are the king of the AMs.
I would not really. First of all, thanks a lot. I would never say I'm the king of anything, but I guess I was, it was constant enough to gather enough points, and I think that the biggest decision was that Mark missed last race also, but he was definitely the faster driver. There's no talking around that. I'll take it, to be honest. It was a super hard day for me. This morning I woke up and I felt like as if I would have taken a beating or drank too much or whatever, which I didn't. I still was with fever and everything, and 1.5 hours sitting in the rig, like pushing it real hard, like body temperature was rising all the time. I'm completely wet and soaked, looking for a shower. Yes, it was super hard, but I take it. But at the end, I also lost the car 2 times because I just lost focus at some point and then somehow messed up braking and spun 2 times.
Oh, goodness me. Well, sorry to hear you have not been feeling too well going into tonight, and we do hope that whatever you're experiencing does clear soon, because we want you in the best of health, of course. But coming into tonight with that on your mind, plus also the general pressure of racing in the championship that always comes with racing, I have to ask, what became your focus for tonight in terms of getting to the end of the race? What was it keeping you sane, if you will, or making sure that you could keep one eye on the road at all times?
To be honest, I just did want to finish the race, so it wouldn't have mattered if I hit the wall or whatever. The main goal for the race was just to finish. I had a bad qualifying, so I pushed really hard during the race to get by all the other AM drivers as possible. Also, I saw Mark spun right at the beginning. First 1 or 2 laps it was, I think, not sure. That gave me quite a bit of a gap, and then I could keep up with pro and with pro drivers a bit better than I was thinking that I could. To be honest, I wasn't sure why I had the pace I had. I don't know. I'll just take it as it is.
It was absolutely brilliant pace, even though you're not quite sure where it came from, and in a car which many in the YouTube chat going into tonight was saying did not do too well on the corners around here at Daytona. The Mercedes AMG may struggled in the corners, but it definitely seemed to work well on the straights.
Yeah, the car was awful. Like, to be honest, at the beginning of the week, the first time I grabbed the car and drove it here, I spun like 10 times. I didn't even make the first lap. So I just tried to stay calm and focus on first learning to handle the car and just completing laps. Even did a few IMSA races with lots of LMP1, LMP2 cars driving around, which made it even harder. But I didn't look at lap times at all. I just really focused on surviving and finding out where are my weak zones, which turned out to be the exit of the chicane. So that was the only thing I managed to practice today just a bit, and in the single player mode. Yeah, that was basically it. Fiddled a bit with the setup to make the car a bit more tame, because it was a bit, yeah, it wasn't safe enough for a long race. So I gave up 1 or 2 tenths on the straights, just to have a bit more, yeah, security left with the car.
Was a smart set of adjustments on the car and really dialing in and focusing on what you needed to be able to make it to the end of the race as smoothly as possible. And coming back to your points earlier, we did see quite a few instances on the open laps, one that did collect Mark Johnson and put him away down the order, and you were leading for the vast majority of the race. In terms of your strategy, we saw it was a free-stop strategy today for everybody involved. How was it feeling on the tyres and fuel?
It was just fine, to be honest. I had a quick look. I only changed tires once at the second pit stop, and then I had a look at the degradation, I think you call it, and it was only around 72-73% on the front tires. So that was good enough. Gave me enough security to not change tires on the last stop. Yeah, so tires were not a problem. The car itself was more of a beast to handle because it wanted to rip your head off at every possible occasion. And yeah, I can be quite happy that it only managed to spin 2 times on me, and only so near by the end. The only thing I was not so happy about was that I messed up my last pit stop. I didn't brake early enough, so I had to put the car in reverse a bit, and that cost me like about 3-4 seconds, which put Mark just right, I think 1.5 seconds behind me as I left the pits. But yeah, apart from that, I can just be happy to have survived it, and yeah, that the race played out the way it did. Yes.
Oh, indeed. And whilst there were some small mistakes in the pits, still keeping a good gap and going on to the final stint with an advantage of what was 1.5 seconds. And it looked as though you had everything in control. And then the spin at turn number 4.
Yes, that is something that sometimes just happens almost out of nowhere. You just need to step a little bit further to the left or to the right, and it's gone. It's one thing I'm working on, trying to understand why and try to avoid that. I think if someday I manage to understand why things like that happened, what is the little things that I do different and then lose the car. I know halfway to how to avoid it, but I'm never 100% sure why it is that way. So I was even thinking about, take like a coaching or something like that, and hoping that someone can explain why that happens. That is also a reason why I never tried to avoid using the Ferrari, for example, because I'm quick with it, but I can never tell if I will spin out of nowhere without knowing why. Like I had a wild guess, but I'm never sure why it happens. So yeah.
Oh, indeed. And sometimes it can happen where it just goes wrong and you have to have a look back at it after the race. But we won't dissect the spin too much. But then falling into P2, we saw a further spin. And I have to ask at that point, was it almost starting to enter a stage of how much worse can this get from this point onwards?
Well, I wasn't too happy about the spin, let's say it like that way. But yeah, I just concentrated on finishing the race, trying to. I looked at the relatives, and I saw that the next AM driver was Frank Land, I think, and he was like 17 seconds away. So yeah, I just focused on finishing the race without making too many mistakes, extra mistakes on top of that, so that I could at least keep P2. But I really didn't have a clue if that was enough for the championship or whatever. I just really wanted to finish the race, at least P2. After being P1 for quite a while, that was like my minimum goal. I would like to yeah, to save. Yes.
Well, indeed, and achieving exactly that goal after 90 minutes of racing at P2, and with that taking the AM Championship crown. And I have to ask, as you made your way to the checker flag for the final time this season, I know you're not in the best state of health, but what was your reaction as you came across the line? Could you believe you've done it?
I didn't know what the championship, how the championship would play out, to be honest, and that really wasn't my first thought. I was just like telling my teammate Casper over the chat that I was just so happy that it finally ended, because I was completely exhausted. My like I said, my body temperature really had ramped up. I was just exhausted, and I still am. I'm really looking forward for a shower and just to crawl up in my bed. That's all I want for today.
Oh, well, Daniel, I won't keep you too much longer because you've earned that shower and the right to crawl back into bed. And we do hope you feel better soon. But I just
Yeah,
have
well,
two last quick questions. Firstly, when you look back on this season, I think you're going, I know what the answer is already, but what has been your highlight or highlights along your way to becoming champion?
yeah, driving at home, of course. That will always be my highlight. Doesn't matter if it's the first, the last race, or whatever. Um, that is the thing I most like. And yeah, and this race, to be honest, I was very surprised to be in the mix with some pro drivers at some times, that I was like P7, P6, whatever I was. That really surprised me, especially thinking about the way I was feeling with my health. Um, yeah, I was just surprised. Like, I'm always surprised when I'm fast at anything, because I don't really count too much on. I'm not used to being too fast in iRacing or stuff. Like we came over from Gran Turismo like 1.5 years ago, being quite good over there. We started driving iRacing and hit rock bottom because we were absolutely nowhere. Everybody was driving circles around us. So now slowly getting the hang of it, and yeah, getting back up to speed is a nice thing to see. That is the main thing I take with me, is to see that yeah, you work on yourself, you work with your teammates, don't give up, and yeah, the pace will come at some point, hopefully, if you just stay calm and yeah, just do your best. That's all.
Oh, indeed, and great advice there for anybody listening in right now who's looking to improve in iRacing, no doubt about that. And well, with that in mind, just one last question for you. In that, is there anybody you'd like to give a special thank you to or a shout out to live on the broadcast this evening?
Oh yes, of course. My family, as always, for supporting me as they do. My teammates, they are always there for me. We always race on Saturdays if we can, and we do team races, endurance races, whatever. Then one last thing, I would like to dedicate this race to my grandmother, which passed away 2 weeks ago, which really hit me really hard. And sitting in my rig and concentrating on the race was on the racing was what is keeping me keeping me busy and trying to distract me from that big loss. So yeah, just this one was really for her. I hope she likes what she sees, if she can see it, that's all.
Oh, Daniel, well, with that, definitely a heartfelt moment there, and I can sympathise with you on your feelings. Indeed, family so ever important, and with that, a great way to round off your championship campaign and a great dedication as well to your late grandmother. But congratulations once again on your victory today. Well, indeed, a victory for the championship, a second place in class, but taking that all-important championship crown. We do hope you feel better soon, and thank you for joining me in the interview room.
Thanks a lot, mate. Bye-bye.
So hearing there from Daniel Pays, the Old Dudes in Cars driver, a very emotional interview there, and also one where you can clearly hear he's not feeling too well, and I do feel a little bit guilty for the interview going on a bit too long, but at the same time, great to hear from him, and the Mercedes driver this season. Well, he may not have felt it going into the season, but he definitely has been a force to be reckoned with, and whilst there have been some things that have gone his way, including -6 points to Mark Johnston's championship campaign for an early season penalty, and also a couple of rounds where Johnson may not have been able to make it by comparison with Pays. You've got to be there and be in it to win it, and that's exactly what the Old Dudes in Cars driver did, and we're coming down to only 2 points between them. Both drivers there delivering it mattered most, but the difference being Pays being able to put together that string of results when he needed to, and the turning point was his home circuit at the Nürburgring, and indeed his highlight of the season plus this race today, and what a wonderful way to dedicate his victory in the championship to his late grandmother. And with that, well, definitely moving forward, and we look forward to seeing him out of circuit in future seasons. And well, could he be vying for perhaps the Pro Championship at some point, or will he be defending his AM title? We'll have to find out in season 11. More on that after today's interviews. But coming now to our second interview of today, we'll be hearing very shortly from Frank Klein, who gets ready to join me in the interview room. And well, it has been an absolute turnaround season for Frank after his initial first half of the season was a bit of a struggle. But in the second half of the season, a win at Road America saw him absolutely fly high and carry the championship momentum all the way to the end of the season today. And well, as we double check our notes with regards to his performances this season, I do believe with this result, he finished in what was P11 in the AM class. But as he joins me now, good evening to you, or good afternoon to you, Frank, from the stateside. And well, what a way to wrap up your championship. Third in class, P9 overall, a season best overall performance, and a way to wrap up a second half of the season that really has seen you go from strength to strength.
Yeah, I got caught up in some stuff early, and I think I would have been right there with Danielle and Mark. Um, Unfortunately, one lap of qualifying set me back, and then just, bad luck at the start of the race. But because it was a long race, I remained calm and just kept plugging away.
Oh, most definitely. And we saw that from you. And speaking about qualifying, P15 overall, P7 in class, a difficult opening that which saw many a driver get caught up in an incident into turn 4. And we saw you have to take a bit of a rallycross approach to avoid the incident, but you seem to come away from it relatively unscathed.
Yeah, so I knew I was under pressure, and so I was going to brake harder on the outside and just cruise, maintain my line on the outside. And as soon as I was approaching the apex, I saw a car sideways. It's one of them Code Brown moments, and I decided to just go in the grass and wait till everyone cleared, and then take off.
And from that point onwards, after steering clear of the danger, we saw you put in an absolutely brilliant recovery drive, cutting your way through the field, place after place, and it looked as though there the BMW and yourself were in harmony. It was almost as if the car seemed to just be gliding past some of your rivals.
Yeah, that is the laps I've turned on Daytona in this car. I didn't actually like the tune very much, but with real racing this week. And I just had a 4-hour drive back home. I wasn't even sure I was going to make the race. 0 practice. It was good. I had a great battle with Livingston. That was an entire race we battled, so that was cool.
Well, indeed, and we saw a great back and forth between the two of you over all 4 stints. And with regards to your strategy, did you keep it as per the strategy you went into the race with, or did you need to adjust it at any point?
No, I went in with my plan. I've ran 12 hours numerous times, not just on iRacing, but in general. So I knew that I only needed 1 set of tires, so I was going to take that on my middle stint, and it turned out to pay off. I blew my pit stop. I went too far in one, so that's how he got back ahead of me, or got close to me when we were exiting the pits. And then he caught a lapped car that was running the same pace as us, so that allowed him to catch back up. And that was a little argy-bargy. I just thought, I don't know who that is in the Mercedes.
Oh, that would be, I think, Rob Armstrong.
Oh, I'm pretty sure he's not happy with me.
We did get a bit nip and tuck between the two of you.
Yeah. So I think he was the one that was pushing the issue with me and Livingston. So I guess I don't feel too bad. I didn't send him. I didn't get an X or anything. I didn't even know I hit him.
It may have been a little bit of net code to be factored in there, but I'm sure whatever's happened will be sorted after the racing today, and nothing too much will come of it. But coming back to your battle with Livingston over the course of the race, over 90 minutes, back and forth between the two of you, and it looked as though as time was going on, a podium was coming closer and closer, and the pace never seemed to be faltering.
No, full fuel, empty, old tires. I was running right around the same pace every lap, which is, what you want in a long endurance race like this. Just consistency.
Indeed, and that consistency really showing, but at the same time you weren't too afraid to get your elbows out where you needed to, as we do see more of the battling footage with Rob Armstrong, and there did seem to be some moments where you needed to mix it up with not just Armstrong but other pros in the field.
Yeah, so there was a pro in between me and another AM ahead of me, and he was a little bit slower, and I wanted to get up to him, and I had to push the issue and at least put the pressure on him to know that I needed to go. You know what I mean? I don't think it was anything over aggressive, but it was definitely aggressive.
Well, indeed, and sometimes a little bit of aggression is there. You've got to be hard but firm, as they say. And emerging from those battles and back and forth, we saw as the race went into its final stints, the BMW never seemed to really lose its edge over the course of the race. But was there anything you were wary of in the final stints, such as low fuel, tyres? Because we did see a lot of drivers start to have spins in the final 10 minutes.
I've gotten pretty good at my fuel calculations, so I wasn't worried about fuel. For whatever reason, I went into turn 1 with like 4 laps to go and completely lost it. And I was like, whoa, geez, got it under control. And that allowed Livingston to catch back up. But I was able to calm down and then continue to go.
Oh, indeed, and we did catch that moment. We had a look at it with some brilliant car control there to stop the car from going wayward and get it stopped just in time. And in the end, really a bit of car control that enabled you to take 3rd place on the podium in the AM class and P9 overall. And with that result, just finishing outside the top 10 in the AM Championship. But when you look back on the championship, what has been your one highlight or main highlights of the season?
Well, obviously, Road Atlanta is Road America is an extreme high. That was that was from qualifying all the way through to the race. That was a complete race that I put together. And for the 2 seasons I've been here now, I've never been able to put a complete race together. So that was confidence builder, to say the least, to know that I do belong, and I can exceed and excel.
Indeed, I thought you might say about Road America, because it really was a stellar drive for yourself, and I would say it's really given you a lot of momentum in this second half of the season. And what's next for yourself? You talk about doing some of your own real-world racing, but could we expect you back on the grid for season 11 of the GT3 League?
Yeah, probably, if Tiki will have me back. Sometimes I'm not the under the radar sort of driver that some teams like, but I believe I bring entertainment, to say the least.
Oh, indeed. Well, we do hope to see you on the grid for next season and rocking the Tiki colours, indeed, standing bright and tall amongst the field. But just before we do let you go, Frank, is there anybody you'd like to give a thank you or a shout out to live on the broadcast today?
In the real world, my race team, TTI Racing, Polish Mafia, and the ROC Tour Mod series. In the virtual world, obviously Tiki. From top to bottom, just a great group of guys to work with and race with. And on the oval side of iRacing, Zeem Setup Shop. If you ever need a oval track setup, Zeem Setup Shop is the one to go to.
Well, Frank, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on your drive to 3rd place in class and 9th overall today, and with it an 11th place finish in the AM Class Championship this season. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you on circuit again in the near future.
And thank you for everything you do. You make this league what it is.
Well, that's very kind of you, Frank. It's my pleasure.
All right, thanks, bud.
All the best. So here and there from Frank Klein in the AM class, and I think that a very reflective approach to looking back on today's racing. And it was great to hear his thoughts as you're looking back at the footage of him battling with Rob Armstrong. A fantastic battle between the two of them, albeit the thing about characters down on the paddock, you always do get some characters. It doesn't matter what series it is, whether it be in the real world or the virtual world. And I'll definitely say one thing: if we didn't see Frank in the paddock, we would be missing one of the characters that make sim racing what it is. And the Tiki SimSport Toa driver may have had a difficult first half of the season. Road America, it was almost as if a switch had been flicked. He turned it around and attacked the circuit there, and that win really is setting him up with a brilliant run to the end of the season. It may have not been perfection all the way through, and indeed at some point losing some key points and not being able to make it to Watkins Glen last week, but the Tiki SimSport Toa driver showing great signs of pace, and I'd imagine if he was able to make all the rounds in season 11 and able to keep that consistent form, we could be looking at a new AM title contender in the next season. Will we see him there? Well, time will tell. But I think we may do, and we may see him flying the Tiki SimSport colours once again. Now, in between the first and second interview, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, I have been informed that we're not going to be able to hear from Brandon Hay due to the fact he's had to jump away due to personal circumstances. So therefore, that concludes our interviews for today. You've heard from our 2 interviews, both from the AM class. Most recently, Frank Klein from Tiki SimSport Toa in the number 33 BMW M4. And then previously, our AM Championship winner and our 2nd place finisher today for the AM class for an old dude in cars is number 8 Mercedes, Daniel Page. Congratulations to both of them, and well done to both of them, not just in their performances in this final round of the season, but also over the entirety of the championship. And we look forward to seeing them back on the grid in season 11. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to start wrapping up. But before we do so, we must take a look at the provisional final standings of the season, and here they are. We start off with the Elite Drivers' Championship, and we can see After 8 rounds of 8, it is Håkon Grebstad who, confirmed as our champion last time out at Watkins Glen with the hat-trick of wins, stands at the top on 241 points. 41 points behind, Martin Tillin did what needed to be done today to take the runner-up spot in P2 on exactly 200 points. Sits clear of Nathan Foster for Empire Motorsport B, who stood behind the TT SimSport Corp and Eden Motorsports drivers, but still the second runner-up, and he'll be pleased with that. Ryan Davies managed to leverage P4 for TT SimSport Kimi, ahead of Empire Motorsports A Sam Congreve, who we missed over the last couple of rounds, and Alexander Hill at P6 there for TT SimSport, ahead of UKSimRacing Hunt's Mark Davison, whose second place today gave him great points in the run to what was that P7 in the championship, with Darren Orkett for Racing Forces, John Adams for TT SimSport Kimi, and TT SimSport Corpus Nick Wren completing the top 10. Best of the rest P11, Travis Wallace for TT SimSport Toa, the best part of 24 points clear of Philip Schwerker, with Jacko Taylor, Joe Newman, and Carl McGirt for TT SimSport, Empire Motorsport A and Racing Forces respectively, completing the top 15. And then Jonathan Hitchin for Symphony Esports White P16, with Reece Saunders, Alvaro Marinero, Darren Flanagan, and Cy Anthony rounding off your top 20, and then Austin William Campbell P21 for Symphony Esports White. But coming from the elite standings, we come to the Pro Championship standings, and we can see Peter Cox there confirmed as your championship winner, effectively your championship winner going into tonight, as even if Darren Sharples had been able to pick up a perfect score, it would have gone to result countback, and Peter Cox would have been the champion based on number of wins, having a 1-win advantage in that theoretical scenario. But in the end, the UKSimRacing Moss driver able to outrun Darren Sharples by 2 points to the finish line, and what a close championship battle between them. And you can imagine if things have gone slightly different in a couple of rounds, we could have seen things go the other way, but still Peter Cox had to do it the hard way given the disaster at Okayama, where he saw it all unfold very quickly from the lead of the race in round number 6. For Darren Sharples, commiserations perhaps to the runner-up spot, but still at the same time the Audi R8 LMS Privateer absolutely attacking hard in a car that many described at the start of the season as being not competitive, or a car that would only be competitive in certain rounds. But for Darren Sharples, he proved most wrong in the fact he brought the Audi to each and every round and made it work. And well, with a 16-point advantage over Brandon Hay, the Newbridge Esports Privateer there with a great run in the second half of the season, with 3 podiums back-to-back, including the second place today and 2 third place in rounds 6 and 7, jumping into P3 ahead of Matt Strand. Matt Strand had a difficult end to the racing in today's finale for the Racing Nav AM driver. It was a race that could have gone differently, but still taking P4 ahead of his teammate Ivan Breivik, with Kasper Rotner P6 there for Old Dudes in Cars, and in 2 points behind him Thomas Aspaug, who missed the final round of the season, but still P7, and he'll be pleased with that. UKSimRacing Hunt's Rob Armstrong P8 ahead of Paul Robson from CHR Motorsport, and then Eric Rosev completing your top 10 there on 149 points for Racing Nav AM2. James Rankin P11 for CHR Motorsport, with Richard Jones at P12, and then the gap between Jones and Scott standing at 15 points, with Nathan J. Scott looking to be one of the primary contenders early on in the season, but missing the second half of the season, and the Empire Motorsport B drive finishing in P13. David Larson for Civic Esports White, and his sister team's teammate of Civic Esports Black, Ollie Pimley at P14, P15, with Tony D. Hobbs P16. And only ahead of Billy Bob Ray based on result countback for Empire Motorsport B, and it was Darren Fellows and Daniel Merchant for BDM Racing and TT SimSport respectively who completed your Pro Championship standings. And then coming on to the AM class finally, in terms of our Drivers' Championships, Daniel Pace taking the win in the end by 2 points. That's all it was in the end, 2 points for the Old Dudes in Cars driver, making it count versus Mark Johnson, and the UKSimRacing Boss driver there, pushing hard all the way through. But again, I think regretting those 6 penalty points at the start of the season at the Red Bull Ring, and how those were able to make the difference at the end, with Johnson arguably having the stronger pace over the season, but Pace bringing that key consistency, and that's what made the difference between them. But a great battle. In the battle for P3, Steinar Sunny taking P3 in the end based on result count back on equal points versus John Doble, although we can check to be that clarified. In fact, no, it's the other way around. We must apologise there. John Doble was third place in the championship for TT SimSport Kimi, albeit the standings here show them the other way due to alphabetical order, I do believe, of some description. But either way, Doble was P3 based on wins, with 1 win to Steinar Sunny's 0 wins, and that win at Detroit really coming in handy for the TT SimSport Kimi driver. And starting off Sunny for Racing Lab and won P4 in the end, but still joint on 204 points. He won't be complaining about it, given the fact the run of form we saw from Sunny, much like Doble, there were moments of greatness, but almost moments of difficulty as well, and both fought through them. Matt Maddox P5 there for BDM Racing, 3 points off of the top 4, with Simon Andre Lewinston just outside the top 5 by 4 points in the end, but ahead of the privateers of James Connolly, Marvin Cruz and Thomas Barjuk, and then Satinder Deanser completing your top 10 there for Tiki Simsport Corpa in a great drive to 128 points. 9 clear of his teammate Frank Klein, who we heard from only moments ago, albeit from Tiki Simsport Tar, the sister team, with Jack Wynn from Westy Racing P12, 10 points good Joe Pinder for Ignium Motorsport, and then Simon Hartley for Tiki Simsport Tar and Matt Edmondson completing your top 15. And then outside the top 15, but not to be counted out, John Waldridge for Revolution Sim Racing, Tony Bradley, Eric Stegen for Racing Lab AM 1, Ben Watkinson for Revolution Sim Racing, and Baz Meacham completed your AM standings. Now lastly, coming on to the Teams Championship, and we can confirm that UK Sim Racing Moss have taken the championship crown by 5 points in the end over Tiki Simsport Kimi. It came down to fine margins between them, but for Tiki Simsport Kimi, they did not quite have enough in order to usurp UK Sim Racing Moss, and indeed for the UK Sim Racing team, able to stay one step ahead when it truly mattered, and congratulations to the pair of Peter Cox and Mark Johnson for taking the crown jointly. Outside the top 2, a further 3 points behind Racing Lab and 1, who struggled in the end to try and bring down the runner Tiki Simsport Kimi at the end of the season, but ahead of their sister team at Racing Lab Am on 377 points, and then Old Dudes and Cars just inside the top 5 and 2 points off of the top 4 there on 375. Tiki Simsport Copa P6 on 344, 30 points clear of Empire Motorsport B, with Ignium Motorsport, UK Sim Racing Hun and CHR Motorsport completing your top 10, and CHR Motorsport having to be battered and bruised along the way to that top 10 finish, but still making the way through, and a great performance there from the team, with Tiki Simsport Tire best dressed in P11, and then Tiki Simsport, the main outfit, P12, ahead of BDM Racing, with Empire Motorsport A, Racing Forces, Civic Esports White, Westy Racing, Civic Esports Black, and Revolution Sim Racing completing your team's championship of 19 teams. Congratulations to all of our championship winners, but with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's broadcast, in fact, if you've enjoyed the whole season from start to finish, and you've been tuning in for some time, or just for this round, or all in between, and you want to know more about the UK Sim Racing community in terms of the leagues we host, or just want to become part of the community, well, firstly, we definitely do recommend you check out our official website, that's uksimracing.co.uk, because you can find out about all of our upcoming series and ongoing series there on a regular basis, and also you can join the UK Sim Racing community via the Discord, but also we do have our official Twitter, and that's at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. If you do want to follow us on social media and keep up to date with all of our latest series, but also the trials and escapades of our esports teams. And also on top of that, we'd like to take a brief moment to say a big thank you to all of our affiliates, and they include Swelio Meda Sim Racing Coaching, and Swelio Meda, the creator of the Motor Racing Checklist. His sim racing coaching can help take your sim racing driving to the next level. If you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency, Swelio Amida has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with Swelio being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching for the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware, as a proud partner of Mercedes AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports. And lastly, Amazon, the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the position of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Prime, Amazon Fire TV, and Amazon Alexa. But as we turn our fortunes forward now towards next time, well, there will be no further rounds in Season 10 because that's the conclusion of the season, ladies and gentlemen. But don't fret, we'll be back in only a couple of weeks' time for Season 11. We get underway once again on Sunday, the 25th of June, 2023. And, well, we'd love to see you on the grid. It's going to be another full season of racing. And as we do look to the calendar, you can see It is going to be a whole, 9 rounds of racing, and we begin things off with the Fuji circuit on the 25th of June. And, well, if you want to know a little bit more here, here's the poster with regards to the season, and we can see with an entry fee of only £18, you'll be able to have access to weekly practice sessions and 45-minute sprint races and 90-minute endurance races. On top of that, we see the return of post-race stewarding, free driver classes, Elite Pro and once again, the Teams Championship is also back, and I'm very pleased to say, ladies and gentlemen, all the races will be broadcast live on YouTube or as post-round broadcast as close as possible to live, and I'll be in the commentary booth bringing you all the racing action from circuit side once more in another hotly anticipated season of GT3 League racing. So definitely, if you want to be on the grid, I recommend checking out the official UKSimRacing website and go and join our Discord, because all of the joining instructions for the series are available on the Discord. And if you've got any questions, then the administrators will be readily available on hand in order to help you out and get yourself on the grid for another season. And well, season 11 is going to be an absolute firecracker, given the fact that season 10 has been absolutely sensational. And when we've got Fuji, Daytona, Willow Springs, VIR, Road Atlanta, Barcelona, Le Mans, Phillip Island and Mount Panorama on the schedule, some circuits which are brand new to iRacing, including Willow Springs, and also some circuits which are staples of GT3 League racing, such as Barcelona, well, this is one not to miss. But perhaps you're not looking to go GT3 League racing. Well, we'd just like to tempt you a little bit with the fact we also have coming up in the near future Season 7 of the Porsche Cup. And will the Porsche Cup featuring the Porsche 992 Cup machine. And if you're looking to get to grips with perhaps a more tenacious machine, which doesn't have traction control nor anti-lock braking systems, and you like a good bit of 6-cylinder German machinery with 510 horsepower, we can definitely recommend checking out this series for only £15 on entry. And we're a grand total there of 9 rounds of racing action. We'll get at weekly practice sessions, gold and silver divisions, a teams championship, all the races being broadcast live for the season on YouTube. And I'll be bringing you all the racing action in that one as well. And we do have a combination of sprint and heat rounds along with endurance rounds. It's definitely not one to miss out. And we have a calendar there seeing our drivers that make the way around Road Atlanta, Spa, Watkins Glen, VIR, Jerez, Road America, Giles Villeneuve, Silverstone and Suzuka. And it's definitely not one to miss. So plenty to come at UK Sim Racing, but we'd definitely love to see you on the grid for either one of those leagues. But of course, if we have to be a little bit biased, then definitely we'd love to see you on the grid for Season 11 of the GT3 League. And save the date, because we'll be back with all the races action on Sunday, the 25th of June, 2023. But until then, that is the end of Season 10. We have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. It's been my pleasure to bring you this season of racing. Congratulations to all of our champions once again. But until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.